Chapter 1086. Long time no see, why sure? At this moment, under the rising sun, the travel-worn senior's sister waved her hand and noticed the atmosphere between the two. She seemed to understand something. Did I interrupt your work? No, you didn't. Under A.I. Ching's gaze, Huai Shi withdrew his hand from Luo Xian's shoulder as if he had been electrocuted. His voice trembled as he greeted her. Didn't you say you would come later? Because I couldn't wait, Luo Xian replied with a smile. So, while you weren't paying attention, I sped up ahead of time. As she spoke, she made a flower gesture. Surprise, yes. Huai Shi tried hard to wipe the cold sweat on his forehead and forced a smile. Surprise. Thank you, senior sister. He sincerely hoped that someone would appear soon, and something would happen quickly. For example, Russell's sudden death, the invasion of destructive elements, or the attack on the ivory tower, so that everyone's attention would be diverted from him. If it really didn't work, he could just die suddenly. There was no need to bother the ladies. Fortunately, this kind of thing didn't need to happen. Luo Xian no longer paid attention to Huai Shi. And the bad thing was, she looked at A.I. Ching. Can you introduce me? Luo Xian asked curiously. Ms. Luo Xian, nice to meet you. A.I. Ching calmly reached out her hand. I'm A.I. Ching from the Directorate of Governance. I've heard a lot about you. I've heard of you for a long time. Luo Xian held her hand, and her smile was as clear as the sun. I'm sorry to suddenly interrupt your work. Please don't take offense. It's okay. I just arrived. It's more like I'm disturbing you. There was no earth-shattering, and nothing that scared Huai Shi happened. They politely shook hands, exchanged polite greetings, and politely exchanged contact information. And Huai Shi was wiping his cold sweat in a place where they couldn't see, trying to catch his breath. Why? Why did the premonition of death keep appearing? Why was there a lingering panic in his heart? Why did he have the urge to hang himself with a rope of sorrow? But soon, before he could sort out his thoughts, he felt Luo Xian's gaze on him. She was full of doubt. Are you all right? I'm fine. It's great. Huai Shi subconsciously straightened his body and replied solemnly. I teach every day, and I'm in good health. I just advanced, so I slept soundly. You look a little too pale. Have you been resting well recently? Luo Xian sighed helplessly. Just now, I said, when I was on my way here, I just remembered that the ticket I booked is for tomorrow. So, I might disturb you tonight. Do you have a place to stay here? There is. Huai Shi invited her without hesitation. Stay at my place tonight. It's big and comfortable. Before he could finish his words, his voice was stuck. He sensed a calm gaze coming from behind Luo Xian. It was so deep and playful. Huai Shi was suddenly drenched in sweat. In this frozen time, he stiffly twisted his neck. He could only hear his heartbeat frantically bursting forth like thunder, ravaging his fragile soul and consciousness, gradually pushing him towards death in the sea of despair. And at that moment, Huai Shi finally came to his senses. In this shadow of crisis, what emerged in his soul was an unprecedented calmness. His consciousness was operating at high speed. He used his brain, activated his wisdom, and came to a conclusion. He grasped tightly onto the life-saving straw in the dark. Of course, Huai Shi's expression was as calm as usual. He said indifferently, there are many rooms in the stone marrow hall. Guests come from afar, so there's no reason for them to stay elsewhere. As he spoke, he looked at A.I. Ching magnanimously and sincerely invited her. So, do you want to come together? In the distance, the little cabin in the forest secretly peeked out only to see darkness in front of his eyes. He staggered back a step, unable to stop sucking in the cold air. The strength of an ox, level 10. It was as if he could see the two pitch-black words, EQ, blooming above his teacher's head. Such a carefree dance in the minefield, such a careless gamble. He was completely unafraid of the tragic scene that might happen next, and the terrible consequences of flipping over. What it showed was a magnanimous heart without any worldly desires. Was this the true strength of the gold medal cowherd of the Astronomy Association? Love. He bravely took a step forward, but in the fog, was there a smooth road ahead or an abyss? Even Huai Shi didn't know. In this short, almost imperceptible moment, he finally received a reply after waiting anxiously. Okay. After seemingly thinking for a while, AI Ching nodded slightly. Coincidentally, I haven't seen Mr. Fong for a long time. Then, I'll have to bother you tonight. As she spoke, she bowed slightly and nodded to Huaisher to thank him. Gulp. Huaisher secretly swallowed his saliva. Why? It seemed that he had smoothly passed the tribulation, but why did he feel more and more uneasy? What was wrong? Even the evil chill on his back seemed to have gotten closer to him. It was almost lying on his neck, silently exhaling cold breaths and laughing sinisterly. This made him vaguely feel that he seemed to have made a worse decision. But now that things had come to this, there was no turning back. Even if he was shameless and drank poison to quench his thirst, he could only stride forward. In any case, I, Huaisher, am a pure and innocent person. My actions are righteous, and I sit upright. I just happen to know a lot of girls. What's there to be afraid of? After the pot was cracked, Huaisher raised his head, flicked his hair to the back of his head, and straightened his collar. He looked refreshed. I'll take everyone, no need. Luo Xian smiled and waved her hand. I won't disturb you from talking about work. Just find someone to take me there. Well, I think she's a good person. She casually reached out her hand. While no one was paying attention, she fished out Anna, who was hiding behind the counter and quietly watching the fun, and like magic, she appeared in her hand. She lifted the back of her collar. The girl, who was still holding potato chips in her arms, was still licking the salt and pepper on her hands, and looked at her teacher. She was stunned. Oh, what a coincidence, teacher. Anna blinked her big eyes, trying to look cute. What are you talking about with two beautiful girls? You really know how to talk. Luo Xian smiled and stroked the girl's head. She shook it twice and easily suppressed the girl's resistance. Finally, she waved her hand and said, We'll go first. You guys take your time, but you have to come back before dinner. Otherwise, I'll cook myself if I'm hungry. Okay. Huaisher nodded his head like pounding garlic. Definitely. How could he not be sure? If Luo Xian entered the kitchen, there would be a large-scale biological disaster in the ivory tower today. Just like that, he watched as his senior sister floated in and out of his sight. The lingering fear had not disappeared. But when he looked at the inspector beside him, his heart that had just calmed down was raised again. Are you done? AI Ching asked. Yes, I'm done. Huaisher blinked his eyes and answered innocently. Then let's get to work, Mr. Huaisher. She picked up her luggage, walked in front, and sighed with melancholy. I have a hunch that this inspection will be full of surprises. I hope you didn't do anything unspeakable in secret. No, absolutely not. Huaisher patted his chest and promised. This time, before he spoke, he looked left and right to prevent any accidents from happening. After making sure that his senior sister had gone far, he breathed a sigh of relief again and continued with confidence. All along, our celestial genealogy has adhered to the principle of treating people with sincerity and standing on faith. We have developed and communicated with an open, fair attitude. His impassioned statement was nonsense, and he didn't finish it until they walked out of the elevator. AI Ching was annoyed. She pushed open the door of the office, looked around at the clean and open environment, and nodded slightly. She asked the secretary who was bending over to tidy up the blanket beside the sofa. Hello, is this Huaisher's office? I'm from the administration. The teacher is not at home today. Yuan shouted in horror. After throwing away the blanket in her hand, the girl stood up straight, blushed, and spat out all the words in her stomach. I don't know anything. The teacher is sick and went to Shambhala. Please come back another day. In the sudden silence, AI Ching silently turned around and looked at Huaisher behind her. She was expressionless. What did you just say, sincerity? On the quiet street leading to the outside of the campus, there was a rare sight for many passers-by to see. A traveler carrying a huge backpack held a girl in red by the collar and curiously looked at the rare scenery. From time to time, he would stop and take a few photos. Finally, he remembered his purpose and lifted the girl in his hand again. Where do we go? Left. Yes, turn left, and then we'll be there. Anna tried hard to twist a little, and squeezed out a smile, showing flattery and docility without any wildness. Can you put me down first? Huh? Isn't this good? Luocienne was puzzled and shook her head. It looks quite harmonious. I remember. Your name is Anna, right? The girl nodded frantically. Then she saw her smile. I like you very much. Luocienne rubbed her hair, full of expectations. If I have a daughter, I hope she can be as lively and lovely as you. Anna was stiff and didn't know how to react for a while. She could only answer dryly. Thank you for your compliment. But I think it's better to forget it because I hate children the most. Luocienne sighed. They cry, make a fuss, and don't listen to me. They always make trouble regardless of the occasion. If I want to teach them a lesson, I have to be careful because if I don't pay attention, they will break. Anna is cuter, right? How is she cute? It's a place that won't break down easily. Anna felt that she was going to explode. She was scared and curled up into a ball. Look, it's soft like cotton. It's so cute. Its big blue eyes are so cute, and its skin is so white and smooth. It's all very cute. She gently rubbed the girl's cheeks, full of love for the furry. And under her hand, the white wolf trembled and shivered. Tears flowed uncontrollably. Under the control of that sweet smile, the young heart had been covered by a shadow of horror. Little Anna gradually came to a realization in her heart. Although I don't know what's going on, but teacher, you will die a terrible death in the future. No, this day might come very soon. She decided. Today, she would buy an express ticket back to Yekaterina Castle. Run as far as possible. Don't let teacher's blood splash on her. Chapter 1087. At the same time, outside the border station of the Ivory Tower, excited shouts could be heard from the bustling crowd. Ivory Tower, I'm here. Prince of Paradise, I'm here. The blonde girl jumped excitedly in the crowd, screamed, and shook her colleague beside her crazily. What should I do? What should I do? Phoo. I'm so excited, I'm so excited. We might only be 2 kilometers away from Hawaii Shore. Maybe this time we can directly see this sort of disaster. No, the navigator himself. I'm so excited. Look at this scenery. How wonderful. The air is so sweet. Maybe there are 2 molecules in it that were exhaled from Hawaii Shore's throat. Oh, roar, 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 roar. Speaking of this, the blonde girl laughed strangely, hanging on her colleague's body and wriggling like a maggot. Phoo, he was expressionless. Be decent, Jima. Calm down, stop sucking. I just saw the auntie in front farting. With great difficulty, she persuaded her companion to calm down a little. At least she didn't tremble like an epileptic patient. She finally let out a long sigh. She was tired. Can't you Prince of Paradise's people look at the situation? And when she didn't pay attention, the dog in her hand ran wildly at the station, finally passing through the crowd and rushing straight to the end of the square, where the helpless girl in the white dress was at a loss. Pounce on her. Lick, lick, lick. Please, please don't. The confused girl took a step back in panic, subconsciously holding her skirt that had been lifted, and the map in her hand fell to the ground. The huge dog's head had already arched into her arms. It flicked its tongue and rolled its eyes. Then, in the void behind the girl, the outline of a giant deer suddenly appeared. It lowered its head, pointed its sharp, giant horn at the uninvited guest, took 2 steps back, pawed its hooves, and then accelerated. Bang! The lousy dog flew into the sky with a howl. The giant deer glanced at it flying away, tilted its head, spat disdainfully, turned around, and disappeared. Only Phoo, he was left in a mess in the wind. What happened? Sorry, I'm really sorry. This lousy dog is really too disobedient. 10 minutes later, Phoo, he tugged on the dog's leash tightly and apologized to the girl with a smile. The girl, who was at a loss, froze for a moment, as if she was amused by the scene. She covered her mouth and shook her head. It's okay. This, Mr. Weischer, is also very cute. Well, he's just a little big and a little scary. As she spoke, she carefully reached out and rubbed the fur on the giant dog's head. The giant dog was instantly excited. It wagged its tongue and wanted to pounce forward again, but behind the girl, the white deer's faint silhouette deterred it. In the end, it lay on the ground and docilely wagged its tail. That's good. That's good. Seeing that Fu-Yi was fine, Gemma, who always acted like she was close to Fu-Yi, suddenly had a wicked idea again. She picked up her suitcase and patted Fu-Yi on the shoulder. Then I'll go first. As for the professor, please remember not to. I understand. I'll help you apply for leave. Fu-Yi sighed helplessly. You're going to visit the Holy Land, right? Oh ho, Fu. You really do understand me. Love you. Gemma blew a kiss and began to run wildly with her suitcase in tow. After she was far away, she waved excitedly and said goodbye. I'll bring you around the prince. Oh, thank you so much. Fu-Yi covered her face. She really had no strength left. Soon, she noticed the worried gaze of the girl beside her. Excuse me, do you need help? Help? Help me correct the personality of my SDK roommate's idiotic personality? And the person she was obsessed with was her good friend. Thinking of this, Fu-Yi felt like her head was going to explode. If the fact that she knew Huaishur was exposed, she was afraid that she would spend the next 3 years of her internship under Gemma's terrifying shadow. She would completely become her tool. She might even be asked to steal the original flavor back to satisfy her unspeakable agenda. Besides, compared to myself, you're the one who needs help, right? She looked at the girl in front of her and felt like she had seen her somewhere before. She was very familiar. I saw you standing here. Did something happen? She asked. It's the first time I've traveled so far alone. I got lost. The girl named Lily answered awkwardly and picked up the map in her hand. And I don't understand this thing. Fu-Yi glanced at it and instantly understood the crux of the problem. It's pardonable that you don't understand. She sighed and said, the map you're holding is white cities. There was a click. She seemed to hear the sound of teeth grinding. The girl showed a terrifying and dark expression in an instant. She was muttering a short name that seemed to only have 2 letters, but soon, the girl opposite her calmed down and became calm and harmless again. She expressed her gratitude in a dignified manner, like a princess. Thank you. Fu-Yi, just call me Fu. Fu-Yi shook her hand and smiled. If there's anything you need help with, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm sorry. Lily hesitated for a long time and took out a note. Miss Fu, do you know how to get to Rongwon Hotel? What a coincidence. Fu-Yi was stunned for a moment and raised her eyebrows slightly. Good, I'm going too. She took out her internship certificate and the door plate from Rongwon Hotel and invited, do you want to go together? Can I? Of course, when I got lost in the past, there were often big sisters who passed by to guide me. Don't mind at all. Fu-Yi smiled proudly and took her hand. Let's go. As she spoke, she pulled the girl and strode in the direction of the subway. And just behind them, behind the pillars of the station, a silent woman looked at their backs worriedly. Next to her, the lid of the trash can suddenly opened. KP stuck his head out. Is it really okay to leave it like this? She's not a child. ST glared at him and couldn't help but whisper softly. It's just going out alone. It's no big deal. Besides, she has to learn how to make friends. Although he said so, it was obvious that he couldn't help but worry. The lace ornament on the cuffs was already deformed. KP rolled his eyes and began to instigate. Do you want to follow them and see? How about I give you a successful sneak? And I can also help you pass psychology. What's the difference between that and a stalker? ST shook her head. After pursing her lips, she reluctantly withdrew her gaze. Let's go home. Okay, but I feel that we'll miss a lot of classic plots if we go back like this. KP reluctantly looked at her and patted the camera in his hand. Well, he had already taken a lot of precious materials. It didn't matter if he lost a little. But soon, he noticed that ST was looking at him. It was as if she was looking at trash. You changed the map I prepared, right? The rich woman took out a grenade. This KP subconsciously covered the camera in his arms. Then he saw ST throw the grenade in her hand into the trash can. The lid was pressed down. After a muffled sound caused by countless shrapnel, a wisp of smoke slowly emerged from the trash can. Just stay there and wait for someone to send you back. ST gave the trash can one last glare and turned to leave. Rongwon Hotel, a high-end accommodation brand from America's Rongwon Group, signed an official agreement with the Ivory Tower. At noon, on the 11th floor, by the window in the restaurant. After the initial awkwardness and nervousness, and after confirming that this big sister was not a bad person, Lily let down her guard and invited this kind lady to have a meal with her for the first time. At the same time, they gradually talked about their own matters. A friend. After hearing the purpose of the other party's visit to the ivory tower, he couldn't help but feel melancholy. A very important friend. Lily showed a rare solemn look and corrected her. A very, very important friend. Well, I can feel that she must be a very outstanding person. He nodded. Although she didn't know the specific name of the girlfriend, she could feel from her description that she was handsome, upright, gentle, and affectionate. That's great, that's great. He held her chin and sighed with envy. I also want a friend like that. However, she only had a lousy dog and a dead salted fish that wouldn't move even if she poked it. Why was there such a big difference between people? However, you must be careful not to be deceived. He reminded her seriously. For example, don't believe words like after dinner. Do you want to come to my house? Or, I can't go back after school curfew. Can you let me go to your house for a while? What? The girl was confused. Because, he leaned over and lowered her voice. She described the tactics and goals of various classic scumbags, and even the final results. Before she finished, she felt a high heat rising from the girl's head. Even he was amazed. Why are girls so shy nowadays? She just said, it's so dark at night, and I'm so scared. This is too fast. Lily trembled. Fuyi's eyes twitched, and she shrank back a little. Be careful, girl. The fork is going to break. Is it really like this? In shock, Lily grabbed the tablecloth and muttered to herself about the ugly nature of creatures. Why has it never been mentioned in the dictionary, and so on? She was at a loss. Calm down, calm down. He reached out and placed her hand on Lily's palm like a psychiatrist. Her voice was calm, and the power of the silent one calmed Lily's restless consciousness and soul. Don't be afraid. There's nothing to be ashamed of or afraid of, Lily. As long as both parties are adults and express their willingness, this is a part of the relationship that comes naturally. This is a more intimate part of the intimate relationship between two people. Intimate? Lily was at a loss. Yes, intimate. He said softly, just like hugging and kissing. This is human nature. You don't have to be afraid of it. Under the comfort of the silent one, Lily finally calmed down. She seemed to have accepted the reality of the adult world, but the fear still lingered. As for she hid her trembling hand under the table and took a sip of her drink with her other hand. She suppressed the fear. Her trembling hand couldn't stop shaking. Until now, she realized what kind of big boss was sitting across the table. The creator. This was a F***king creator. She wasn't the one who was frightened. She was the one who was frightened. If she wasn't sure that the other party wasn't pranking her, she would have run away with the excuse of going to the toilet. What the hell? An underage creator and a beautiful girl. This world was too fantastical. Unfortunately, there was no chance to run away. Just across the table, the girl grabbed her hand and held it tightly, her eyes full of admiration and admiration. Miss Fu, you know a lot. Cough, cough, it's just so. He looked away embarrassedly. You must have that experience. Lily lowered her voice and asked curiously, Can you tell me what it is like? What the hell? He couldn't hold it in anymore and wanted to cover her face. Why did she have to talk about this for no reason? It could only be said that the accident happened so suddenly that it caught her off guard. The hand holding the drink couldn't help but tremble. Looking at the pair of eyes that were pure and thirsty for wisdom, she began to think. In order to maintain the dignity of the old priestess, is it too late to secretly search? Chapter 1088. During the meal, Huaishir was scared witless. Even the small stove in the school cafeteria was not delicious. On the other hand, the female inspector sitting across the table slowly finished all the food on her plate. Her expression was calm from beginning to end, and there was no sign of joy or displeasure. Finally, after wiping her mouth, she looked up. On her right, the screen on the table lit up. The report from the inspection team had been submitted. In just 2 hours, 16 people from a statistics department had completed the audit of the Ivory Tower's combat readiness, storage, operating capacity, personnel, combat power, as well as all the project finance, operation, and stage evaluation related to the Central Command Bureau. The efficiency was astonishing. Congratulations, why sure. She raised her eyebrows and seemed surprised. As you said, your work is impeccable. All of the results were worthy of exclamation. Perhaps you can get the highest evaluation of all the border defense assessments in this surprise inspection. Huaisher's chopsticks paused for a moment, and he subconsciously let out a long breath. Even with Russell's information in London and the arrangements made, everyone had come up with enough result for this inspection and prepared for a long time. But after the morning inspection, Huaisher was a little nervous. The surprise inspection of the Central Command Bureau had always been strict, and when Huaisher owed them money, they would only be stricter. To put it bluntly, this group of people was purely nitpicking. What's more, the one nitpicking was his old acquaintance, AI Ching. It was too extravagant to expect her to be lenient with the rules. For her, no matter how good their personal relationship was work, and there would be no slack or tolerance. Moreover, Huaisher felt that their personal relationship might have reached the brink of crisis. What if it fell apart, of course? He would not lose his head. But every time he thought that they might meet again in the trench prison, Huaisher's stomach hurt. It could only be said that he had carried too many burdens that did not belong to his age, whether it was debt, responsibility, or other things. However, before he could rejoice for long, he felt that something was wrong from AI Ching's words. Wait, what do you mean by maybe? Perhaps it means if the observation reports and work logs submitted by the inspectors are also fine. AI Ching replied straightforwardly. The investigation hasn't ended yet, Huaisher. At least, the last item hasn't been completed. Huaisher's scalp began to tingle. This was probably the most insignificant part of all the review items. During the surprise review process, the review team would make a subjective judgment based on their experience to see if the target's ability was competent for their position in the next task arrangement. It was a free mark question. Generally speaking, as long as everything in the investigation process was passable, the inspector would not make things difficult for them. At the very least, they would give them a grade of B or above. He wouldn't embarrass them too much. But the problem was, could the investigation process really be completed? Thinking about his numerous criminal records and endless future troubles, Huaisher's hands couldn't stop trembling under the table. Don't be nervous, Huaisher. I'm not interested in the secrets and plans of celestial genealogy. Even if someone is interested, this part is not within my scope of work. AI Ching frowned and told him solemnly, you just have to work as usual. I'll be by your side and personally determine the operation of the Ivory Tower. That's why I'm scared. When he thought about his to-do list and the reception task in the afternoon, Huaisher's blood pressure began to skyrocket in the direction of death. But looking at the serious face in front of him, he really didn't have the courage to ask if they could change the investigation person. If he really said it, he would die, right? Even if he didn't die, he would definitely be tortured to death in the future. Or he would be tortured to death by all kinds of messy tasks assigned by the Bureau. Or a straightforward death. So, since he was going to die anyway, couldn't he choose a simpler way to die? Just thinking about the dark and gloomy future made him unable to stop the tears in his heart. What's wrong? AI Ching asked doubtfully. Is it not suitable? No, it's suitable. It couldn't be more suitable. Huaisher shook his head and answered decisively without thinking. Just like that, he didn't hesitate to kick himself into a dead end. Half an hour later, he found that the dead end had come to an end. He even began to regret it. Why didn't I die earlier? Just behind the open door of the reception room in front of him, the intern students from the Continuation Academy were still excitedly exchanging what they had seen and heard along the way and speculating about the next tour. And Huaisher, at a glance, saw the innermost part of the room, deliberately dressed down and completely inconspicuous among them. Fooey! And beside her, who was talking and laughing, Lily? Huaisher's vision turned black, and he staggered. He held the door and almost lost his balance. His fingers trembled as he pointed at the scene behind the door and looked at Yuan. What's going on? Teacher, are you talking about Ms. Gila from the Darknet? Yuan glanced inside and immediately answered, yes, because the two sides seem to know each other. Ms. Gila also signed up for this tour. Oh, that's amazing. If I didn't look at the information, I wouldn't have imagined that the lady was the creator. If there's a chance, I really want to ask. Teacher, what's wrong with you? Are you not feeling well? She looked at Huaishi's pale face and the cold sweat on his forehead in puzzlement. No. Ew. Well done. Huaishi squeezed out a smile with difficulty, turned his head, and quietly wiped the old blood from the corner of his mouth with trembling little hands. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. But there was still A.I. Ching's death stare behind him. He couldn't use the toilet as an excuse to run away. He could only bite the bullet and walk into the reception room. He wished he could tiptoe and pray madly in his heart that no one saw him. He would just go through the motions and slip away, but when he poked his head out, he heard a surprised voice. Mr. Huaishi. She forgot about the occasion, as well as her usual shyness and nervousness. After seeing that familiar face, the excited girl jumped up from the chair and subconsciously approached him, greeting him expectantly. Long time no see, how are you? For a moment, the room was silent, and all eyes were looking in the direction of the door. They fell on his face. Surprise. Long time no see, Lily. Huaishi tried hard to put on a smile without worldly desires and nodded in response, but the chill on the back of his head couldn't stop. He felt the gazes coming from behind him and from beside Lily. It was so meaningful. Fu, he poked her head out and praised. Is this the good friend you've been talking about, Lily? Wow, it's the sort of disaster, so amazing. You're flattering me. Mr. Huaishi is the amazing one. Lily shyly tugged at the corner of her skirt, embarrassed. I'm just a very ordinary friend. Under Fu Yi's curious gaze, the corner of Huaishi's eyes twitched, and then again. Inexplicably, he felt a sense of horror, as if he was sitting under the judgment platform. Don't panic, Huaishi, don't panic. This is just a coincidence. You must stay calm. Even if he were to die, he had to die innocently. But I'm obviously very innocent. Why do I have to pretend? Before he could finish his 100,000 inner thoughts, Fu Yi had already taken the initiative to walk up to him, smiling and reaching out her hand. Nice to meet you, Mr. Huaishi. Can you please sign an autograph for my roommate? She's a big fan of yours. As she spoke, she took out an autograph book that she had prepared long ago and quietly winked at him. She signaled him not to expose himself. Huaishi was stunned. In this silent, tacit understanding, he felt an unprecedented deep bond between him and his good friend. After experiencing the repeated devastation from reality, Huaishi was so touched that he almost cried when he encountered this considerate warmth. Is this what a good friend is like? Love. But after the initial feeling of being touched, he couldn't help but panic even more. But what exactly was the problem? The problem was that he couldn't say it at all. He was clearly in a room with a suitable temperature, but he felt as if he was walking barefoot on fragile ice in the cold winter. He only felt that if he took a wrong step, he would die without a complete corpse. Even the premonition of death was constantly fluctuating between two extremes, creating a feeling of certain death, but also a feeling of stomach pain that didn't seem to be completely dead. He tried hard to leave his name on the autograph book. Trembling, he handed it back. Soon, the blonde girl who was usually so brave and crazy in her mind, but after seeing the real person, she hid in the crowd and didn't dare to show her face at all. She held the autograph book and the signed version of the gold card and began to laugh foolishly. She completely didn't notice Huaishi's teary and expectant gaze. Aren't you a fan? How can you just ask for an autograph? You don't even want to say a few words. Someone come, no matter who it is. Break this strange atmosphere that seemed to be very normal, but made him want to cut his own neck and hang himself. So, in the dark, it was as if his prayer had been heard. The Savior fell from the sky. A gentle and warm voice sounded. Friends who are visiting, please pay attention to the queue. Everyone, come this way. Don't be noisy and crowded. Don't worry, There would be a special Q&A session and autograph time for everyone later. Waving a small flag in her hand and wearing a temporarily borrowed uniform, Luo Xian appeared valiantly and skillfully distributed their passes to all the participants. Everyone had one pass, everyone had a share. In the intense stomach pain, Huaishir felt that the terrifying shadow of hell was once again one step closer to him. Xian, Sister Xian, I'm here to help. Luo Xian smiled playfully at Huaishir. Because it's too idle to stay in the room, and it's not good to wait for Mr. Fong to serve us, so after taking a shower, I simply came to volunteer with Anna. With that, she looked at the girl next to her. Am I right, Anna? Yes, that's it. Anna nodded frantically, wishing that she could shake her head out of her neck. She was extremely obedient. However, when she looked at Huaishir, the white wolf girl showed a flash of panic and silently asked for help. Teacher, please save me. What responded to her was the teacher's already red eyes. Under the noon sun outside the window, a drop of tear that clearly only existed in an illusion had fallen from his cheek to the dust and smashed into pieces. Just like his heart, your teacher can't be saved. How am I supposed to save you? Chapter 1089. In the short first half of his life, Huaishir found that no matter how scheming humans were, there would always be a limit. Of course, this did not include debts, loans, the degree of bad luck, and the malice of this world towards him. In just 5 hours after experiencing a lot of destruction from fate, he was already lying flat. As the saying goes, when you have too many debts, you don't have to worry. As long as people were alive, there would always be a day when someone's life would collapse. It's just a house collapsing. What's there to be afraid of? So be it. Moreover, if I die, at least 5 people could be divided. Isn't that great? After thinking this through, he had already given up resistance, especially when he found out that the first stop of the local tour program was the Tai Academy. He knew that a certain black-hearted woman would not rest until she killed him today. The first stop is the Alchemy Institution. The mentor of the Continuation Academy was surprised. The Ivory Tower is really generous. Is it okay for us to visit such a confidential place? Of course not. Can't we change it? It's better to take a look at the amusement park that has recently been built by the school. In addition to the Death Roller Coaster, the Hell Ferris Wheel, the realistic Drop Tower, and so on, there's also the Ghost Castle. Hot songs and dance, it's so exciting. It's guaranteed that no one will return. Huaishir wanted to say this, but the tour schedule had already been sent to everyone's hands, so he could only nod with tears in his eyes. Just look at the fucking schedule. The Tai Academy, the Foundry Center, the classical music classroom, the principal's secretary's office. Every link revealed naked malice, as if they wanted to directly push Huaishir into a pot of oil. Other than Tong Ji, who else would do this kind of work that could cost lives? At this moment, just outside the brand new Tai Academy, in front of the metal building built with the structure of the Heavenly Palace, everyone looked up in amazement at the solemn and cold silhouette and could not help but marvel at this spectacular scene. Even the entire building was a miraculous crystallization created by alchemy. With such a jaw-dropping style, it was no wonder that the rumors outside said that the new supervisor of the Tai Academy was a mysterious great grandmaster. Tai, among the silent trainees, a studious student asked curiously, is it Tai from Eastern Xia? If you want to talk about classics, it should be the oldest alchemy sourcebook passed down by God Hermes, the Jade Record. If one is above it, then one is below it, thus accomplishing the miracle of Tai. Huaishir, who was leading the way, had already entered the state of a conversationalist. He spoke with fervor and assurance. The Tai here can also be described as one comma, the entirety comma, the origin comma, the essence, and so on. It refers to the source of all divinity and miracles among the 3 pillars of the present realm, the pillar of the essence itself. Through this method, the Jadeite record described the nature of the birth of this world. However, the Tai of Dongxia was also born from this concept. Apart from some conceptual differences between Dongxia and Rome, the two actually had the same meaning. In Eastern Xia, Tai was considered the origin of all things, the supreme controller and protector of the present realm. This was the pillar of the spirit and marrow itself. If this power was reduced to a god, then there was no doubt that it would be the emperor of the gods. Therefore, in the description and inheritance of the ancient books, it would be referred to as the noblest of the four directions, which is the origin of the name Eastern Emperor Tai. Because this power was too high and untouchable in most of the arcana, it was iterated and derived again. The concept of Central Emperor Tai as a replacement and replacement. However, this was a bit of a digression. Everyone, please come this way. Next, I will show you the 6th-generation lava disaster reactor that was developed by our ivory tower. This is something that is specially used to create a part of a super large relic. Huaisher pushed open the door. In an instant, the huge silhouette standing in the empty hall appeared in front of everyone's eyes, causing a wave of exclamations and sighs. Isn't it spectacular? Huaisher saw that everyone's attention was gradually diverted from his personal life, and he inwardly let out a sigh of relief. He beamed with joy, and his voice became even more impassioned as he explained. The entire furnace was built using a 6-stage project. There are 41 origin substance circuits used to power it. Apart from the low-density alloy at the bottom, the entire furnace is made of. Everyone was gradually dumbfounded by the data and scenery that Huaisher described. In the absolute silence, Huaisher gradually realized that something was wrong. His expression twitched. Only then did he realize that no one was looking at the furnace inside, but was looking at him instead. It's really not bad. Behind him, Ai Qing had her head lowered and was writing something down as she calmly praised. That's right, especially the angle of the camera. It's very particular. Fu Yi nodded in praise. The exposure and white balance are really perfect. Luo Xian nodded in agreement. It's too close. Lily's cheeks were completely red. She covered her face and quietly peeked through the gaps between her fingers. She was shocked. Even if it's still too... Huaisher's movement stiffened in place, and he was stunned. What? When he finally turned around and looked inside the door, he saw the lava disaster reactor that he had just described. It was indeed, as he said, spectacular, huge, solemn, majestic, and luxurious, and on the wall behind the reactor, there was a huge picture that looked like an oil painting. In the picture, in the afternoon under the setting sun, in the Ivory Tower Symphony Orchestra's practice room, young girls with beautiful figures surrounded the instructor, gazing longingly at Huaisher's figure and smile. The handsome instructor was guiding the cellist in the orchestra step by step, correcting her finger technique and movements. It was as if he was hugging her from behind, leaning close to her, smiling as he whispered something in her ear. Under the sunlight outside the window, the girl's cheeks were pink and red, like an apple. It was unknown who had taken the picture, but this ambiguous and hazy, beautiful atmosphere was completely captured in the picture and transmitted to the eyes of every viewer. Huaisher subconsciously closed the door and blocked the door. He felt that he was hallucinating, but when he looked back at the scene behind the door, he found that the huge picture was still there. Tangi, I'm going to kill you. Forget it. It's better if you kill me to liven things up for everyone. Gulp. He swallowed his saliva, and in everyone's dull eyes, there were a few eye-catching gazes that became playful. Some were curious, some were indifferent, some were at a loss, and some were mocking. Wow, the teaching life is so exciting. Is this a disaster musician? I love it. In a crowd, there was a voice that seemed to be exclaiming. The fire was burning. Even if you beat Huaisher to death, she would never forget that tone. Fui, did you go to the Continuation Academy to attend a fun person's training class? What happened to being a good brother? Why did you push me into the fire pit? Aha! My colleagues are joking with me. They actually hung the picture of the orchestra director here. Don't mind it. Don't mind it. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and squeezed out a smile on his dull face. Ahem. As a gold medal teacher of the Ivory Tower and the director of the symphony orchestra, isn't it normal for me to have a good relationship with the students? Is it teaching? Lily was stunned. Yes. Huaisher nodded frantically, widening his eyes to show his sincerity. Our musical communication is always like this. Well, Indeed, why sure, sometimes it's easy for you to ignore social distance. Luo Xian held her chin and sighed. Especially when communicating with girls, some words are always misunderstood. And you're always overzealous. As she spoke, she looked at Huaishur with a smile and reminded him helplessly, "You're a teacher after all. Be a little more careful." Yes, 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 yes. Huaishur was so moved that his hair stood on end. Ai Qing, on the other hand, glanced meaningfully at the girl behind Huaishur, whose gaze had been drifting from side to side since the beginning. She seemed to sigh unintentionally. Oh, indeed, the teacher-student relationship is good. Well, it's just a small matter, don't mind it. Huaishur walked stiffly and led everyone forward. At this point, they could only cut the Gordian knot and leave the crime scene as soon as possible. Otherwise, if they continued to be entangled, who knew what would happen? Speed up. Come, next, we'll visit the Divine Wine production line, inherited from the Helios workshop, the pharmaceutical production center of the Ivory Tower. Now, what we see is in front of the open door, Huaishur was sweating profusely. Behind the door, in the spectacular production center named after the Divine Wine, countless photos were hung on the wall above the miraculous fountain, which almost formed the scale of an individual photography exhibition. And there was no doubt that the theme of all the photos. There was only one. Huaishur. Huaishur. And it was Huaishur. They even thoughtfully marked the names of the works. Huaishur in Dongxia, Huaishur in Yingzhou, Huaishur in America, Huaishur at work, Huaishur resting, Huaishur eating lunch. And in the photos, there was Yishuya, who chatted with Huaishur at the table in Dongxia, Liz, who raised a glass with Huaishur at the cold dinner party of cooperation, and Amber, who walked out of the car under Huaishur's umbrella in the rainy car. Under the accurate capture and recording, every photo was beautiful. When their eyes met, it revealed an indescribable depth and tenderness. Tangi. Wow, so many mature big sisters. In the crowd, the pure passerby Fu Yi applauded and praised. Are they also students? Mr. Huaishur has so many students. Under the gazes of those people, Huaishur lowered his head and wiped the blood tears. For a moment, he seemed to have traveled through 1,000 years and felt the blood tears and sorrow that belonged to Caesar. Brutus, even you have a part in it. Chapter 1090. I found out that my good brother is a playful person. What should I do? Waiting online. But it was useless to be anxious. It was too late. Brutus had stabbed Caesar to death. Although he didn't know how Caesar felt when he was stabbed to death by his most trusted traitor, Huaishur felt very panicked now, especially under the curious gazes of many visitors. Social death was close at hand. Especially after social death, there might be a real death standing behind it. Huaishur felt the temperature in her head rise exponentially to the point where it was almost emitting steam. Every single cell in her brain was operating frantically, and every single nerve current was jumping between the synapses of her brain. Every single thought was colliding fiercely within her soul, causing sparks to fly. False wisdom lit up on the title page of the Book of Destiny. At that moment, the darkness of despair was opened up, and Huaishur grasped that glimmer of hope. In this short moment of turning his head, his expression had changed from panic to peace, full of calmness and serenity, as if everything in front of him was just a breeze. There was no more worldly desire and panic, a smile on his face, a solemn look. "I'm sorry to have offended everyone," Huaishur said gently. "As everyone knows, as a member of the celestial genealogy, the secretary of the Ivory Tower's headmaster, it's natural for me to have dealings with other genealogies, right? We're all good friends, so let's take a picture as a result. I didn't expect to be hung here. I'm really sorry." After a pause, he looked at the visitors behind him and smiled. "Later, I like to ask everyone to do me a favor and take a picture as a souvenir. If I can hang a picture with the future silencers, the collection here will be even more glorious, right?" With that, he grinned crookedly, his teeth gleaming. God knows how many people were blinded by it. As soon as they heard that there would be a picture later, and that it would be hung inside, the students who came to visit became excited. To be able to take a picture with His Excellency Navigator, Even if it was just a picture, it would be so honorable. Especially Gemma. No one knew what she was thinking, but her nose began to bleed wildly. Before Huaishir had time to breathe a sigh of relief, he saw Luocian smile. Are we all good friends? Senior sister looked at the photos hanging on the wall and nodded in admiration. Amazing. He didn't know if he was praising the size of his friends or Huaishir's ability to make friends. But no matter which one he praised, Huaishir felt a chill in his heart. She steeled her heart and began to consider if she should just take down the photo of Amber first. She's just a stinky little sister. How can she be compared to my disaster sword? However, when he thought about how his stinky little sister still had his dark history in her hands, his blood pressure almost couldn't take it anymore. If this were to spread out, wouldn't his reputation be ruined in an instant? But why? Mr. Huaishir, are all your good friends female? Lily asked doubtfully. The corners of Huaishir's mouth twitched. His mind raced, and he suddenly clapped his hands. Isn't this a coincidence? He had caused a misunderstanding. Photos had to be categorized, right? Actually, I have another room dedicated to the photos of me and my male friends. That room is much bigger than this one. It's almost full. Fu-Yi, who seemed to be passing by, poked her head out again. Where? Can we take a look? She blinked her big innocent eyes and asked curiously, I also want to know how many boyfriends Mr. Huaishir has. She must have done it on purpose. Huaishir's smile instantly froze, and he couldn't help but twitch. Soon, it turned into melancholy and regret. Cough, that's too bad. He shook his head helplessly and sighed. That room was damaged during the Golden Dawn attack. It was destroyed. It hasn't been restored yet. I think those degenerates are also jealous of my popularity. Yes, it's too bad. Fu-Yi said emotionlessly. It was as if she had heard Huaishir's prayer. After seeing his sorry state, she stopped fanning the flames and returned to the crowd with a smile. But beside her, the blonde girl, Gemma, who had hesitated for a long time, suddenly reached out and jumped up with courage. Mr. Huaishir, I have a question. Huaishir wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead and breathed a sigh of relief. He had finally survived this. Next, it was time for the fans to communicate. He put on a businesslike smile again and nodded gently. Just say it. Although it's very rude, I'm very curious. Gemma widened her eyes and asked in a trembling voice, Mr. Huaishir, do you have a girlfriend? And what kind of girl do you like? Gentle? Cute? Someone who has a common language with you? Or the dignified and serious type? For a moment, silence fell. In the dead silence, everyone raised their heads curiously and looked at Huaishir. Those pairs of green eyes were shining, full of a desire for knowledge. They smelled it. It was the smell of gossip. Moreover, it was the disaster sword who was currently in the limelight, the navigator who had personally caused the return of the voyagers, especially the relationship situation of Huaishir, who was known as the gold cowherd of the Astronomy Society, the middle and successor of celestial genealogy. Who wouldn't love him? And in this pin-drop silence, Huaishir's smile froze. He felt the gazes that were instantly cast on him. The young girl with her eyes wide open and almost jumped up, the smiling older sister, the passerby who was watching the fun, and even the examiner who did not stop writing and did not care about this topic at all. His throat was dry as he swallowed his saliva. He felt the cold wind blowing from the cliff behind him, the shadow of the premonition of death, and even the bright scarlet sea of flowers on the other side of the Styx in an instant. Everything he had experienced in his short 19 years of life appeared before his eyes like a revolving lantern. His first time practicing the cello, his first time performing, his first part-time job, his first time becoming a sublimator, his first time fighting, all the way until now, and finally his first time being dismembered. Everything was vivid in his mind. In the hallucinatory coldness, he had already seen his peaceful home in the small box, a shovel of dirt covering his body, and a spotlessly white tombstone. This day had finally come. But when this day really comes, what should you do? Huaishir? Do you want to be a hero for 3 minutes or a coward for the rest of your life? Do you want to remain silent, or do you want to speak your mind? At that moment, Huaishir looked up and took a deep breath. He looked at the slowly opening gates of hell in front of him, as well as the blood, fire, and ferocity behind the gates. He did not hide it anymore. Of course there is. He nodded and replied, if you want to talk about the object of love, then there's only one. Just like that, he let out a long sigh, raised his hand, and pressed it on his chest. In front of everyone, he slowly said, ever since I became a sublimator, my heart has been completely dedicated to the present realm. From then on, there is no more sorrow or joy. After all, other than this world, is there anything more worthy of love? Only after being far away from worldly desires could such a pure light be revealed, like the sun, bright and gorgeous, illuminating those souls that have been polluted by gossip and obscene thoughts one by one. Of course, if I have to talk about the type of person I like, it would be someone who can protect the future of the present realm with me and realize everyone's happiness. When Huaishir said this, it was as if a wheel of light appeared behind his head, enveloping everything. The light of the Holy Mother shone on the earth. Love? What love? Women will only delay the speed at which I draw my sword, and so will men. Am I, Huaishir, that kind of person? After transcending narrow feelings, I have dedicated my heart and life's energy and painstaking efforts to the world in front of me. Hell is unfair. How can I call home? If it was some other good-for-nothing who said this, perhaps people would scoff at it and not believe it at all. But that was the utopia. Many people went crazy and ran to hell, never to return for the rest of their lives. There were also countless sacrifices and contributions that had long been proven by this world. Was the person standing in front of them not known as the purest inheritor of the utopia, the future pillar of celestial genealogy? Anyone with a conscience would not doubt this kindness and benevolence. At the same time, they could not help but feel ashamed of their narrow vision and outlook. I didn't expect Mr. Huaishir to have such a breadth of mind. One of the inspectors sighed softly. It's really admirable. Sincere praise echoed in the silence. For a moment, everyone could not help but applaud, sighing with emotion at the magnanimity of the utopia and the greatness of the contemporary hero. In those respectful gazes, one could keenly sense amazement and longing, faint smiles, gentle and doting, and meaningful gazes when Huaishir finally led the team out of Tai courtyard and bathed in the sunlight again. He suddenly felt like he had been reborn. In just half an hour! Why did it feel like he had used up a lifetime's courage and wisdom? It was really puzzling. Teacher, are you okay? Yuan saw his pale face and could not hide her worry. Stomach medicine. Huaishir's breathing was weak. Please give me stomach medicine. Of course, there was no stomach medicine to take. Putting aside the fact that the pain of stomach cramps and convulsions was just an illusion, even if Yin Zhongjuan really had gastric problems, if he did not go to Shambhala or find Grandma Qingdi, the Mongolian doctor in the school doctor's office, Yi Su, would be in pain for a long time. He might even have to undergo a gastrectomy. During the break between the tour guides, Huaishir finally had the time to take a sip of water. It was not only because of the lingering fear, but also because of his guilty conscience. From the beginning, the trembling in his arms could not dissipate. Instead, it became more and more intense. Until now, it had reached a point where it could no longer be ignored. Am I terminally ill? Huaishir leaned back in his chair and asked weakly. No, teacher, your phone rang. Yuan replied helplessly. It has been vibrating since just now. You were so focused on your work that you didn't notice it at all. Huaishir was stunned for a long time and could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. God had mercy on him. He thought he was trembling too much. He thought that since he had violated the law so many times, his psychological quality should not be so bad. But when he picked up the phone, he saw the 19 missed calls on the screen, as well as countless text message reminders full of angry words. And a brand new call. Liz, do you also want to join in? Huaishir covered his face and felt that his blood pressure, which was close to the limit, had reached a new level again. He looked around subconsciously. After confirming that there was no one around, he picked up the phone with trembling hands. Then he heard a roar from the other end. Huaishir, you bastard, are you human? The noble lady from America roared. Do you know how long I have been trying to contact you? Don't tell me you're going to do it again. I'm not, don't talk nonsense. Huaisher was so scared that he almost jumped up. Oh, Uncle Izzy was right. A man's mouth is a liar, especially your mouth. When it's useful, you call me little Liz so happily, but when you're ready to go back on your word, you turn your back on me. Go back on my word? Huaisher was instantly alert. Would I go back on my word? Liz could not help but sneer. Look at what you sent over. Huaisher, I don't expect you to have a conscience, but if you want the rest of the money, you should be more professional. Hearing this, Huaisher heaved a sigh of relief. She scared him to death. He thought that this American woman was going to steal his eggs. What's the big deal? Isn't it just a casting furnace? Why are you in such a hurry? These 2 days happened to be the graduation of the first batch of casting trainees sent from America, and it was also the time for the first contract to be delivered. According to the agreement between the two parties, Huaisher taught all the casting skills without holding anything back. The most important thing was that he personally created their own casting furnaces. But the landlord did not have any extra food. In the prosperous days of the Twilight Village, a casting furnace required a teacher to create for his disciple. It was a masterpiece that took a lot of time and hard work to complete. The conditions of the ivory tower were right there. It was okay to make do, but if you wanted to talk about rich things, there was not a single bit. This was especially true with the recent expansion of the border defense line. They had to maintain combat readiness, supply origin substances, transport supplies, and save money. Every day, the vice principal's salary was cut into 2 petals, and he even lost a few strands of hair. Under these circumstances, Liz was still unwilling to spend money. Even if Huaisher wanted to do his best for her, the conditions did not allow it. As a result, Huaisher could only exert some of his subjective initiative within the limited budget. After taking 70% of the money to subsidize housework, he successfully used the remaining 30% to create enough casting furnaces for 200 people to use. Yes, super large. In any case, there was no way they could send a caster to the battlefield. As such, they simply abandoned all of the miniaturized structures and portability and went down the path of stupidity and blackness. The internal matrix could be reduced as much as possible. In any case, those apprentices would not be able to use it, and it would be easy to break it. As such, Huaisher thoughtfully created a children's version. In addition, in order to cultivate their sincere cooperation and work together, Huaisher also painstakingly changed the original standalone version into a family version. 6 people sharing it, and it was a lot of fun. After dividing the time, each person could use it for 4 hours a day, and it could prevent them from getting addicted. How great was that? Liz was actually not satisfied with such a meticulously designed product. The conscience of the Americans had probably been eaten by dogs. After mastering the core technology, Huaisher discovered that he was just that stubborn. In any case, they had never seen what a real casting furnace looked like. What they got was up to him. As long as it could be used, it was fine. What was the point of being so particular? As for his own, this was called a deluxe version. If you have the ability, why don't you ask the Sunmaker to make one for you? Sigh, Liz, you don't understand. Huaisher sighed. He sat on a chair and crossed his legs. He earnestly advised, I'm thinking about you guys. The main thing is that this thing has many variations. Sometimes it's very small, sometimes it's very big. You have to bear with it. Chapter 1091. After saying that, even he himself felt that he was being too heartless. After pausing for a moment, Huaisher sighed and sincerely suggested, or you could spend more money to unlock more new experiences. What do you think? I think it's better for me to personally come to the ivory tower and get to know your skull better. Liz's voice was cold. It just so happens that Mammachilia is lacking a wine glass recently. What are we talking about? Don't be in such a hurry. Huaisher shook his head. As the saying goes, even if business doesn't work out, we still have a little friendship. Besides, you're in such a hurry that I can't do anything about it. You have to be considerate. I also need to earn a living. Stop bullshitting me. Huaisher. The lioness on the other end of the phone roared. Double the casting furnace for me. Otherwise, be prepared to say goodbye to the final payment. Huaishir shook his head without hesitation. 10 at most, no more. Huh, Liz sneered. You've just started construction on the amusement park in America. If you don't want to build it anymore, just say so. Okay. I'm a little busy these 2 days. I'll compensate you after a while. Okay? Huaishir took another step back. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied. Okay? Okay. At most, I'll give you an expansion and a change of color. Huaishir calculated the cost and estimated the maintenance service fee that he could collect every year. He gritted his teeth. 15 sets, no more. I'll be too embarrassed to accept any more. Anyway, with Ivy League's technology, if he wanted to scam them, he could only scam them a few times. In the future, this group of people might develop their own technology and replace it. Maybe by then, he, the master who brought them in, would starve to death. Wouldn't that make those stinky brothers pay more? The amount of money wasn't important. What was important was that he helped America get a high-level talent. He would also get the final payment, maintenance fee, patent fee, and the tools sent in the 3rd training class. Everyone would be happy. It was a win-win situation. After hanging up the phone, Huaishir swept away the gloominess from the morning. He stretched lazily and looked up refreshed. Then he saw a face right in front of him. She leaned against the back of the bench and smiled. He scrutinized Huaishir. I think I accidentally heard something very interesting. The big sister asked curiously, abandoned, very small, very big, satisfied, compensation, and so on. Did something happen that made people concerned? Huaishir was dumbfounded. His heart and lungs stagnated. The corner of Huaishir's eyes twitched. He swallowed his saliva and explained dryly. This everyone knows. However, Luo Xian didn't listen to him. She just shook her head indifferently and smiled. However, I think it must be a misunderstanding. You shouldn't have the guts to do such a thing. She paused for a moment and smiled mischievously. Did you learn bad things when I didn't know? Sister Xian. This long-awaited sense of trust and warmth from her big sister made Huaishir so touched that she almost burst into tears. But you can't bully people. Luo Xian bent down, reached out, and pinched his face, neither lightly nor heavily. She was full of expectation, as if an elder sister was teaching her unreasonable younger brother a lesson. As a prince, you should be gentler to girls, right? I'll try my best. Huaishir sighed. Thinking of a situation he was facing, he couldn't help but have a headache. Do you still want to rest for a while? Luo Xian asked. No, it's almost done. Huaishir shook his head. It's not good to keep everyone waiting. Then continue to work, Huaishir. Don't worry about other things. You just need to focus on your own things. She reached out and pulled Huaishir up from the chair. She said to him expectantly, But next, please show me the scenery you witness every day. Under the afternoon sun, her long hair fluttered slightly in the flying dust. Her smile was gentle and calm. Her eyes stared at the only prince in the world and couldn't help but sparkle, like stars being lit up. Huaishir was silent for a long time, then nodded vigorously. After the Tai Academy, it was the Foundry Center. Although they didn't see the legendary Nautilus, the sun ship that was being repaired still made all the visitors exclaim and praise it. After the classical music teacher, it was the school's symphony orchestra, followed by the Academic Affairs Center and the outer part of the framework. To Huaishir's surprise, Tangi didn't make any more trouble that would make him want to jump over the wall. For the whole afternoon, except for the initial accident, the rest of the place was unbelievably smooth. Even his good brother seemed to have seen enough fun, enjoying Huaishir's grateful eyes, and didn't add any more fuel to the fire. In the end, he took the team to visit the battlefield where the mechanical monsters and the Golden Dawn had fought, as well as the wreckage of the mechanical monster left in the center of the square. Huaishir's work was finally over. The tour ended here. After personally experiencing many laws and miracles, the students who collected a lot of information left with Huaishir's group photo with satisfaction. After a half-day field trip and practice tomorrow, they were going to leave here and go to the next place. In the team, the most reluctant and hesitant was Lily, who joined halfway. After everyone was about to leave, she finally mustered up the courage to speak. Mr. Huaishur, Mr. Huaishur. She suppressed her nervous and excited mood, widened her eyes, and looked at Huaishur in front of her. Are you free tonight? As she spoke, she couldn't help but lower her head and pinch the corner of her skirt. If possible, if. I know a restaurant. Huaishur was slightly stunned. After a long silence, he couldn't help but look back at the two figures that had gone far away. Sorry, Lily, he said apologetically. I may have to go home for dinner tonight. In a short pause, he saw the sad look of the girl in front of him, and finally couldn't help but ask, But, would you like to come to my house for dinner? Fang Shu has been talking about you for a long time. If you're willing to come, he will be very happy. Yeah, go. Okay, of course. Lily almost jumped up in excitement, as if she had received a more serious request than an invitation to dinner. She grabbed Huaishur's hand and nodded vigorously. I will. Immediately, she began to feel nervous again. But it's my first time visiting. Do I need to bring a gift? I didn't buy anything. Do I need to prepare something? There's no need for that. The presence of a creator is already the best gift I can give you. Huaishur replied with a smile. He took a deep breath and looked behind her. The guy who had been watching the show all day became more and more helpless. Seeing that I made a fool of myself today, you should at least come for dinner, right? Oh, it's the first time you meet, and you're inviting me to dinner? The passerby thought for a moment and showed a surprised expression. How embarrassing. That's enough. Huaishur shook his head and sighed. Although I can more or less guess why you pretended not to know me, they have all left, so you don't have to be polite with me, right? Yeah. Mr. Huaishur and Miss Fu actually know each other? Yeah. Lily was stunned. When she thought of what she said to Fu Yi in the afternoon, her rationality had the impulse to shut down. But I'm neither a creator nor an inspector. Fu Yi tilted her head and looked at him, smiling. Besides, after I go, aren't you afraid that it will be very lively? Of course. I'm scared to death. Are you coming or not? Huaishur rolled her eyes and urged, I still have your save file. If you don't want to come, I'll delete it. Huh? Then it seems that I have to go. Fu Yi finally smiled and said sincerely, After all, you've already used such a despicable method. Huaishur reached out, took the things in their hands, and turned to walk forward. With them, he embarked on the journey home. Perhaps this decision was really not smart, nor was it rational at all. But as friends, after such a long separation, they were finally able to meet again. Could it be that they had to pretend to be cold and distant? As for the rest, he was too lazy to care. He had already mentally prepared himself. If he died miserably, then so be it. At least he was magnanimous. Half an hour later, after dusk, in the brightly lit stone marrow hall, the banquet hall, which was usually quiet, was once again bustling with noise and excitement. Children were running around and playing on the carpet. In the resting area in the corner, teachers who had just taken off their coats were chatting and laughing with each other, waiting for dinner to start. Even the vice principal, who had always been cold and unsmiling, loosened his bow tie a little in such a cheerful atmosphere. Well, about 2 millimeters. After the warm greetings and reception, Ai Ching, who was sitting next to the long table, turned around and glanced at the person who was giving out biscuits to the children. She seemed to be impressed. Your family's dinner is really unique. Yes, it's livelier with more people. Huaishur nodded cheekily and turned back to stare at Hut in the woods, who was squatting next to his girlfriend and refused to move. Little 19, what are you doing? Hurry up and take out the red wine I collected to liven things up. Look at this child. Why is there something wrong with her today? She's not clever at all. He was not ashamed to throw the trouble to his student. Huaishur had already felt that in addition to persecuting, another wonderful use of students was to take the blame. The excited Yuka Kamizumi was still comforting the teary-eyed Anna, who was next to her, and inquiring about what happened in the afternoon. Her gossipy expression could not be hidden. Fu Yi skillfully occupied Huaishur's favorite position in front of the TV and began to play games with Lily. In order to make room for the new file, she deleted Huaishur's file. Seeing this, Huaishur trembled with anger and was on the verge of tears. I will collect all of them in the middle of the road. How can you be so shameless? Before dinner, Andrea had already taken a bottle of vodka and a stack of garlic bread and started to drink with Anton. The old professor had just come back from hell and had just finished recuperation. In the blink of an eye, he almost finished half of the bottle and wrote a sonnet on the spot with a red face. He just hoped that they were happy. It's rare to see you so generous. Ms. Yangzi, who was still fashionable, sat in the rest area and smoked a cigarette. She pouted a why sure. Since it's rare for you to come here, why don't you hurry up and take out the bottle of Tiger Killer in the cupboard for your senior taste? If I am happy, maybe I will give you my granddaughter's contact information. You could take the wine later. Anyway, you know where it is. As for the contact information, forget it. Huaisher shook his head awkwardly and did not dare to continue the conversation. He turned back and went into the kitchen to help Feng Shu. Then, he was driven out by Feng Shu. After being busy for a long time, he finally had some free time. In fact, he did not need to entertain them. After everyone got used to it, they were no longer polite to him. However, when he raised his head and looked around at the lively scene, he could not help but be slightly startled. He realized that the empty house, which used to be empty and alone, had now unknowingly become so lively. It was full of laughter and noise. Just like every beautiful dream he had in the past, it dispelled the loneliness and hesitation in his heart and brought him indescribable peace and joy. Just looking at this scene made him smile uncontrollably. He felt a sense of fulfillment that he had never felt before. Isn't it quite good now? Tangi stood beside him and stared at the scenery created by her contractor. She turned back and winked at Huaisher proudly. Don't you want to say thank you to me? Then I have to thank you. Huaisher rolled his eyes. Do you still have something to explain to me? Maybe there is, but why are you in a hurry now? Tangi smiled, reached out, and pushed him forward. Everyone is waiting for you, Huaisher. Go and enjoy the time that belongs to you. This is the reward you deserve. Huaisher staggered back under the light and heard the call next to the table. But when he turned back, Tangi's figure had disappeared. She left this time that belonged to him, to himself. She always likes to make her own decisions. Huaisher complained helplessly and turned to his friends who were waiting for him. He blended into the hustle and bustle that he had been longing for a long time. He raised his wine glass to every familiar smiling face under the light. Everyone cheers. Cheers! More wine glasses were raised amidst cheers and joyful exclamations. The banquet began. Chapter 1092. Lonely lamp, round table, war, cards, scarlet, and a smile covered by shadows under the light. At this moment, in the lounge of the Stone Marrow restaurant, Huaisher looked down blankly at the cards in his hand that were dyed in 4 strange colors. He heard a voice coming from beside him. It's your turn, Huaisher. Following these words, around the round table, faces covered in scarlet lifted up and looked in his direction, smiling. It was as if he had cast down a death sentence. Huaisher closed his eyes and swallowed his saliva in despair. After a short hustle and bustle, happiness was gone. The original plan was so perfect. Huaisher tried his best to think, and from the countless paths leading to despair, he came to the only correct solution. Everyone ate hot pot together, sang songs, and spent a good night together. But the night was indeed beautiful and happy. Everyone drank heartily under the sumptuous hospitality and enjoyed the banquet. It was relaxed and happy, as if there was no haze in the whole world. Unfortunately, there was no banquet in the world that lasted forever. No matter how good the meal was, it would run out eventually. What's more, under the fierce drinking competition of the seniors, many people had already left halfway through the banquet. As they politely bid their farewells one by one, the bustling Stone Marrow Hall gradually returned to its original silence. It was as if the hidden reef paid for its sleep after the tide receded. When Forrest Hutt ignored the teacher's pleading gaze and ran away with his girlfriend, Yuan Yuan also politely took Anna and left. Therefore, in the cozy and comfortable lounge, there were only the guests who stayed here for the night, the guests. The night was getting darker. Huaisher also felt his bones gradually becoming cold. under the gaze of others. It's very late. Huaisher coughed dryly. It's time to rest. Yes, it's not good to sleep late. It hurts the skin. Luo Xian held her chin and nodded in agreement, but it's also very interesting to stay up late occasionally. He didn't show any fatigue. He was full of energy. He obviously drank so much, but he didn't show any signs of drunkenness. Maybe it was some unknown orchard stunt Huaisher didn't know, alcohol and attention or something like that. I still have a part of the observation report to write. Please do not mind me. AI Qing bowed her head and continued to write on the tablet. Her movements were smooth and calm. Didn't she finish it all in the afternoon? Huaisher's heart twitched. It's only a total of 800 words. With your efficiency, you can't finish it more than 10 minutes. Fang Shu came in with a smile with a coffee pot and gently placed it beside her. Then, as if he didn't notice his young master's pleading eyes for help, he left without any sense of existence. The game at night, the game is very interesting. Lily hugged the controller, her eyes drifting. I want to play for a while more. That's a lie. At the border of the dark net, where all information and programs gathered, as the current maintainer, as a human being born as a soul, Lily was a creator created by combining the essence and strengths of the three hosts, DM, KP, and Saint. She had seen countless modules and rules, so it was impossible for her to be so addicted to the story of killing in the Wild West. In this short silence, Huaisher, who was sitting on pins and needles, heard the ticking of the second hand. If it weren't for the fact that his good friend had already gone to wash up, he might have already wanted to run away. Yes, run away. There's so much work in the ivory tower. Huaisher, how can you bear to let the vice president work overtime alone? Work. Work makes me happy. Celestial genealogy hasn't been revitalized yet, and the utopia hasn't been rebuilt yet. How can you sleep? Just as he made up his mind to stay up in the office tonight, he heard brisk and clear footsteps approaching from outside the lounge. His heart suddenly sank. Then, it was accompanied by the slight sound of the door being pushed open. Fu Yi, who was still shrouded in water vapor, had already poked her head in. Her freshly dried hair scattered on her shoulders, looking exceptionally beautiful. She glanced around the room and revealed a surprised smile that made Huaisher's heart sink to the bottom. Oh, what a coincidence. Is everyone still awake? Like magic, she took out a pack of cards from her pocket and suggested excitedly, "Why don't we play Uno together?" Before Huaisher jumped up to object, Luo Xian nodded as if she was tempted. She exclaimed, "Is it a card game? It seems very interesting." I know how to play." Lily raised her hand in surprise. Huaisher swallowed his saliva and subconsciously looked at AI Qing, hoping that the cold, serious, and inhumane Her Excellency Inspector would reject such a child's trick and even criticize it. However, when AI Qing finished writing a paragraph in her hand and slowly raised her head, she seemed to be interested. "I haven't played for a long time after college. I really miss it." She thought for a moment and nodded. "Count me in." Cough, cough. Cough, cough. Cough, 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 cough. Huaisher coughed crazily and tried hard to put on a serious and solemn attitude to refuse clearly. Look at this room. Who isn't a pillar of the discovery realm? Who isn't a confidant of the astronomical society? You're addicted to games, and the outside world is about to start killing and burning. If you play cards here, the endless sea might start holding a league. My disaster sword's heart is about to break. Think about the old crooked tree outside the Chalcedony Hall. But before he could say any high-sounding words, he saw Fu Yi casually stroke her hair. Then, another box popped out from her chest pocket. He could vaguely see the title on it. Truth Speaks Out, bang. It's Uno. Huaisher slammed the table as if he had been electrocuted, and his eyes widened. I like Uno. I'm the one who is known as the Uno Prince of the Ivory Tower. After 2 hours, he looked at the cards piled up like a mountain in his hand. Tears were about to flow down his cheeks. It's your turn to play, Huaisher. Hurry up, Luo Xian urged from the opposite side. Huaisher glanced at his next player, the calm AI Qing. His fingers tentatively grabbed a yellow card, hesitated for a moment, and then grabbed a red card. Finally, his trembling hand handed over a blue card. Is this card okay? AI Ching glanced at it calmly and threw out a blue card. Next, Luocian. Luocian's smile became more and more cheerful, and she threw out a +4 card that made Huaishi's vision go dark. The nightmarish roulette wheel began again. As a card game, the rules of Uno were very simple. There were only a few sentences. The cards were divided into 4 colors, and each had a different number. You just had to play a card of the same color or the same number as the previous player. If you can't play, you have to draw a card. The first person to draw a card would be the winner. However, there were also cards that could change color. If the next player couldn't keep up, the +2 and +4 cards could let the next player draw more cards. There were even cards that could reverse the order of playing cards, and so on. Sometimes, after 2 rounds, the +4 card could be added to the +20 cards until an unlucky person couldn't keep up, and he tearfully emptied his deck. It could only be said that it was an excellent game that tested friendship and family. Especially when Luo Xian's suggestion wasn't exciting enough. She could add more. The final loser's face must be drawn with a marker pen. After that, the situation became more tense and terrifying. The most direct result was that Huaishi's face was completely covered with all kinds of strange graffiti with a red marker pen. It even extended to his neck and arms. His face was scarlet like blood. His tears also became particularly mournful. It couldn't be helped. The previous player was AI Ching, and the next player was Lily. On the other side, Fu Yi was crazily throwing out all kinds of prop cards, and Luo Xian's fighting spirit was like a tide, crazily adding cards. No matter who encountered such a situation, they would cry out loud. Why did it become like this? For the first time, he had a lifelong friend. For the second time, he had a lifelong friend. For the third time, he had a lifelong friend. For the fourth time, he had a lifelong friend. For the fourth time, he also had a lifelong friend. For happy things overlapped. And these 4 types of happiness brought him even more happiness. What should have been a happy time like a dream? But why did it become like this now? Except for Huaishi, everyone seemed to be very happy. It was good that they were happy. He silently held back his tears, took the +14 card, and silently drew more than half of his deck again. The extra cards in his hand piled up like a mountain. Uno. After AI Ching threw out a red card, she announced that she only had 1 card left. From the beginning until now, she had never lost a game in 6 rounds of the game. Every time, it was either the first or the second person who played all their cards. This kind of simple math problem, coupled with President AI's superhuman intuition and analytical ability, a trivial victory was just a piece of cake. On the other hand, Luo Xian's face had been smeared several times. Senior sister's way of playing cards was the same as her fighting style, fierce and straightforward, full of pressure, often making people breathless. When she held a large stack of cards in her hand, after 2 rounds, she would be able to completely wipe them out. And when she took advantage of the situation, she would crazily throw out prop cards and crazily add cards. She could be called the creator of table bombs. Unfortunately, even though his combat awareness was extremely sharp and his talent was astonishing, he would always fail at unexpected places. Sometimes he would be beaten from the brink of victory to the bottom of the valley by unexpected cards. Besides Huaishi, the one who lost the most miserably was Lily. Logically speaking, as an experienced host, playing this kind of game should be easy. It would be ridiculous for a creative lead to lose in a game like this. However, she was sitting next to Huaishi. Sometimes, even if she had a good hand, when she saw the mountain of cards in Huaishi's hand, she would hesitate and not have a heart to play. Often, when Huaishi was in a disadvantageous situation, her expression would become firm and serious. It was as if, "Don't be afraid, Mr. Huaishi, I will protect you." It was written on her face. Unfortunately, other people would not be merciful. In the end, she would often be dragged down by Huaishi. And even if she lost so many times, the girl still stubbornly tried to protect her best friend. She lost again and again, which made Huaishi so moved that he could not help but cry. When he looked at Fu Yi across the table, who was completely happy, he really wanted to cry. From the beginning of the game until now, she did not seem to have any outstanding performance. It was very normal to draw cards, very normal to play cards, and very normal to play all her cards. He definitely wasn't the first, nor would he be the second. More often than not, it would be the third or the fourth. After narrowly escaping the final punishment, Huai Shi and the others were left to begin the final battle, and she calmly clapped and cheered at the side. She was like a phantom hiding in the blind spot of everyone's attention. She was not a threat and did not have much destructive power. Most of the time, when everyone was focusing on AI Qing, who only had one card left, they would often ignore that the cards in her hand were gradually decreasing. Even if they deliberately targeted her, after 2 or 3 rounds, their attention would be diverted to the others. What the hell was the silencer? No, perhaps even the real silencer did not have such a terrifying passive ability. After all, there was not a single normal person at the table. The inspector who had the Astronomy Society's protection array, the princess of the demonic dragon who had mastered countless supreme tier, and the creator who specialized in manipulating things. Any power that manipulated the mind or modified consciousness would be detected in the first moment. There was no room for any tricks. If one thought about it in a more terrifying way, perhaps from the beginning, the atmosphere and the direction of the game were all under her control. The experience of the atmosphere, the observation of micro-expressions, and even the profiling of the style and the cold reading of the detection. Was this someone else's child? Huai Shi was so envious that he could die, but it seemed that even if it was her, there would be times when she would fail. Just as the sky was about to brighten, in the fatigue of a night's battle, she seemed to be in a slight trance and lost the chance to escape. Instead, she received a +16 card. In the end, Huai Shi made a dangerous comeback and fell to the last place. Oh, I miscalculated. Looking at the last 5 cards in her hand, Fu Yi regretfully threw them into the pile of cards and sighed in annoyance. I should have been more ruthless and let out the reversal card. A loss is a loss. Huai Shi grabbed the marker pen and snorted coldly. He laughed more happily than anyone else. Hurry up and give me your face. I'll give you a buff. You started to take revenge after seizing a chance. Do you have to be so narrow-minded? Fu Yi shook her head, as if she had long been aware of Huai Shi's narrow-mindedness. She lifted her hair and leaned forward. But in any case, we're old classmates. Can you give me a chance and at least let me choose a pattern? Huai Shi sneered. Okay, you can choose. Whether it's along the river during the Qingming festival or the Last Supper, I'll draw them all for you. No need to be so troublesome. Anyway, you can't draw them. I'll just take the simplest one. Fu Yi leaned closer, looked in his eyes, and suddenly said, just draw a heart. She smiled and added, the red kind. At that moment, silence spread. Under their gazes, Huai Shi's marker froze in midair and trembled. Under the calm appearance, the tears in her heart had gathered into an ocean. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, everything. The end of life. Chapter 1093. Huh? What's wrong? As if sensing Huai Shi's sluggishness, Fu Yi blinked slightly and said reasonably, if you don't know how to draw, you can change it to something else. No need. After a slight pause, Huai Shi's movements returned to normal. I'm just hesitating where to draw. As if he was carefully considering the angle and position, he reached out and lifted Fu Yi's chin. The slightly trembling marker finally fell on her face. Fu Yi was slightly stunned, but she still closed her eyes and let him do what he wanted. She felt the cold tip of the pen fall on her forehead and wander, steady and calm, without any hesitation. Just like that, 1 stroke, 2 strokes, then 3 strokes, 4 strokes, 5 strokes, 6 strokes. She opened her eyes in confusion. She saw Huai Shi's solemn expression and extremely serious appearance. His strokes were as smooth as if they were divine. But the question was, why did he draw so many strokes when he was just drawing a heart? You're not done yet? She widened her eyes in confusion. Wait a moment, I'm drawing. Huai Shi's movements did not stop. He was careful and serious. I just finished drawing the right atrium, and I'm already drawing the pulmonary valve. It was visible to the naked eye that Fu Yi's eyes twitched. But soon, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. She didn't say anything else. The last stroke was done. It's not bad. She returned to her seat, took out her phone, and looked at the lifelike anatomical heart on her forehead and side face. She raised her hand and took a selfie. She seemed to be quite satisfied with Huaishi's work. It's fine, she said. This is fine too. Next to her, Lily looked at it enviously and raised her hand to ask, I want one too. It's so repetitive to always draw the heart. You can ask him to draw the head for you. Fu Yi faithfully suggested the heart, liver, spleen, and lungs can also be divided into a few portions. There are also arms and legs, right? In his chair, Huaishi, who was almost exhausted, twitched his face. He didn't know if he should thank his good brother for leaving the large intestine for him. At least he could make a sashimi, right? Soon, the brief interlude was over. The game continued. The torture of Huaishi continued. With Fu Yi taking the lead, everyone's subsequent requests began to get stranger and stranger. This included, but was not limited to, a dog's head, a nautilus, a worldwide world card face, a cello, a game console. By the time dawn finally arrived, Huaishi was already physically and mentally exhausted. I feel like I've drawn almost everything that I can and know how to draw. I hate the fact that I'm not a Doomsday artist, nor have I done any research. Otherwise, wouldn't I be able to draw live 2D? But no matter what, the long night was finally over. He felt like he was going to get PTSD whenever he saw cards. Compared to this deadly Uno, he would rather go to hell and find a few crowns to fight. At least that would be easier. He didn't have time to catch up on his sleep. After breakfast, he headed to the Foundry Center and started his work. In the past, he would complain that there were too many things to do and that he couldn't finish them no matter how hard he tried. But now, he couldn't help but shed tears of joy when he started working. He was too happy at work. No one could stop me from working. Unfortunately, work couldn't help him escape from reality for too long. Just before noon, he received a notice from Yuan. The practice at the Continuation Academy had ended. After collecting the changes and data of the local Silver Sea projection, the interns were ready to leave. For a moment, Huaishi froze in place. After a long time, Yuan looked at her teacher in a daze and coughed softly. After a long time, she saw Huaishi finally come back to his senses and whispered inexplicably, You don't even eat lunch, teacher? Yuan was puzzled. No, nothing. Huaishi shook his head, closed the document in his hand, and put down the pen. I have something urgent to do. I'll be back in the afternoon. You can deal with these things first. After picking up the coat on the hanger, he hurried out. Yuan stared at his leaving figure in confusion. After a long time, she helplessly looked at the things on the table. Sigh, is the teacher skipping work again? All right, let's go, Gemma. Stop giggling. In the lobby of Rongwan Hotel, Fu Yi helplessly tugged at her colleague. Can you at least wipe your mouth? You're almost drooling on the ground. I'm fine now. I'm too good. I'm too good. Gemma hugged the large stack of autographed photos and accessories that Fu Yi had brought back. She couldn't bear to let go of them. She touched one photo, then another. All of them were so cute and charming. Especially this bronze ornament with the Disaster Sword's personal signature. Ah, this enchanting fragrance, this seductive color, these exquisite details. Hey, can't you get in the car first? Fu Yi reached out and forcefully snatched those things over. She stuffed them in her bag and pushed her to the taxi outside the door. However, before she could sit down, she saw the figure standing in the corner across the road. He was waving at her. Aya. Fu Yi paused and slapped her head. Gemma, I left something behind. Go to the station first and remember to tell the tutor for me. With that, she patted the car door and motioned for the driver to leave first. Fortunately, her roommate was still immersed in her unspeakable worldly desires and didn't ask much. She was sent away with a silly smile like the golden retriever in the car. Fu Yi crossed the road and looked at Huaishi. You're so polite. You even came to send me off? I feel that your words don't sound quite right. Huaishi sighed, troubled. Did you leave so quickly? It's an internship anyway, Fu Yi said. We go to a place, eat something, finish our work, and then go to the next place. We were able to stay for 2 days because Principal Russell was willing to let us broaden our horizons. It's still a little rushed, Huaishur said dryly. We didn't have time to entertain you this time. Huh, isn't that good? Fu Yi said with a smile. Everyone gathered for dinner, drank some wine, and played games. I also met new friends. Huaishur was silent for a long time, not knowing what to say. In the end, he could only sigh helplessly. I'm sorry. Huh? Did I say anything? Fu Yi seemed to be puzzled. With her hands behind her back, she tilted her head and looked at him. Besides, shouldn't I be the one apologizing? You're so embarrassed. You don't look like the majestic Sir Navigator at all. That kind of title is given by others casually. Huaishur shook his head indifferently. I don't care about that. You're still the same, Huaishur. Haven't you changed? Well, if you've changed, I might not care so much, right? Fu Yi looked at him and sighed with nostalgia. You're always like this, Huaishur. No matter how close you are, you're always unpredictable. You used to be like this. You lived your own life and struggled on your own. If others didn't take the initiative to reach out, you would never open your mouth. In fact, I've never understood. What are you thinking in your heart? Fu Yi paused for a moment and asked softly, Do you care about me? Huaishur opened his mouth and wanted to say something. However, to be honest, seeing you so flustered really makes me happy. Fu Yi smiled. She leaned closer, tiptoed, and looked into Huaishur's eyes. She looked at her reflection in the fog, so clear. Now I can finally see it. Huaishur was stunned for a moment. He felt a slight movement in front of his chest, and the teacher's brooch on his collar was taken off by Fu Yi. He was caught off guard. Let's take this as a farewell gift. She took a step back proudly and smiled as she shook the trophy in her hand. Also, thank you for your kindness. I will treasure this and this. You actually used a sneak attack? Huaishur asked helplessly. This is called outsmarting. Fu Yi blinked and smiled playfully. Because of someone, I didn't catch a taxi. Can I ask Mr. Navigator to send me to the station? Sure. Huaishur nodded. I just got my driver's license, and my skills are not very good. Where did you get the car? Anyway, there's still time. You could drive slowly. Then let's go. Huaishur turned around and walked in front. After taking 2 steps, the girl behind him caught up with him. She smiled, her hands behind her back, holding her trophy. Her footsteps were light. She was like a proud cat, so free. After sending Fu Yi away, Huaishur was not able to wander outside for too long. He had to attend the press conference in the afternoon. The deep cooperation plan between the Ivory Tower and the Darknet was represented by Navigator Huaishur, who signed an agreement with Creator Hela. After days of preparation, the entire press conference was held and ended smoothly. Huaishur shook hands with the girl beside him and smiled at the reporter's camera, officially announcing that the 2 sides had entered a deeper level of cooperation. The integration of resources, the sharing of technology, and the development of new fields. All the content disclosed to the public meant that the territory of celestial genealogy had once again expanded. This would be the return of the 3 wise men system, and the remnants of the utopia were once again trying to reorganize. As for whether they could cooperate as closely as before and reunite as one again, it would depend on the next moves of both sides. In any case, everyone could feel that the behemoth that had been silent for many years had once again taken a crucial step forward. However, no matter how intimate the press conference was and how happy the time was, when the press conference ended and the interface and agreement between the 2 sides were confirmed, Lily still had to go back. There was still more work to be done. Compared to playing and taking a vacation, there were more important things waiting for her, no matter how much she wanted to stay here. Let's stop here, Mr. Huaishur. At the dock, Lily saw KP, who was waving at her from a ship not far away. She stopped and turned back to say goodbye to Huaishur, solemnly and seriously. Thank you for the past 2 days. Don't mention it. Huaishur said apologetically. I didn't treat you well. No, you didn't. Lily shook her head vigorously and smiled brightly. The tour was great, and so was the dinner party. Plus, everyone played cards together. It was all very good, even better than I thought. In just 2 short days, I saw all kinds of things and made so many new friends. It would be great if we could play together again in the future. Huaishi's eyes twitched, and he was speechless. Of course, the most important thing was that I saw Mr. Huaishi at work. Not noticing the subtle change in his expression, Lily continued excitedly. Mr. Fong's hospitality was also very good. Mr. Beelzebub and Mr. Fishball were also very nice. No, forget about Beelzebub. That guy had been talking to people online at a high intensity recently. Once he opened his mouth, he couldn't stop talking. The more Huaisher listened, the more guilty he felt. There was a kind of speechless shame. Everyone is very mature, just like adults. Lily sighed. I always feel that Mr. Huaisher's friends, except for me, are all admirable and enviable. No, actually, there are many people who only know how to cause trouble, and some are bald. Huaisher comforted her. Lily, you're already very good, but I want to be like everyone else, like Mr. Huaisher and the others around me. Lily tugged at the corner of her clothes. If I can grow up a little more, if I can be more mature than now, can I? The more she spoke, the lower her voice became. In the end, it was barely audible. Gradually, she lowered her head in depression. Huaisher took a step forward and reached out to rub her hair. But she suddenly raised her head, took a deep breath, and summoned the last of her courage. When that day comes, I have something to say to Mr. Huaisher. At that time, please listen to me. Her voice trembled. Like a frightened bird, she spread her wings and wanted to escape. But her eyes were still fixed on Huaisher. She waited for his reply. After a short silence, Huaisher didn't evade anymore. He told her seriously, Okay, at that time, no matter what Lily wants to say to me, I'll definitely listen carefully. We've made an appointment? Yes. Huaisher nodded firmly. We've made an appointment. Thus, the young girl smiled happily, as if she had obtained the entire world. In the end, she hugged Huaisher tightly, then took a few steps back and waved goodbye. Then goodbye, Mr. Huaisher. Okay, goodbye. Huaisher nodded and watched her figure disappear into the distance. Until the traces of the ship disappeared at the end of the ocean, he sighed in disappointment. She's gone far, Huaisher. Behind him, a gentle voice sounded. It's time to pay attention to the big sister behind me. Otherwise, I'll be very frustrated. Huaisher turned around in surprise and saw Luo Xian in the distance. She was sitting on a bench by the shore, her long hair fluttering in the sea breeze, and a heavy bag beside her. She smiled at Huaisher. Is this the legendary NTR scene? Chapter 1094. Is this the legendary NTR scene? Unexpectedly, while Huaisher wasn't paying attention, Luo Xian appeared beside him and asked curiously. Huaisher was stunned. For a moment, he didn't know if he should panic, but at this moment, he didn't feel any uneasiness at all. When she looked at Huaisher, only a quiet and gentle glow filled her eyes. Huaisher felt ashamed. In the sea breeze, Huaisher couldn't help but rub his face and sighed helplessly. Senior, where did you learn these things? Huh? Isn't that what the books say? Luo Xian opened her backpack in confusion and took out a lot of treasures from the crows, including shiny glass beads, garlands, exaggerated wrestling posters, and even a lot of small books that had to be mosaicked. With just a glance, she saw a series of discordant words, such as a woman is committing adultery. Soon, they were destroyed and erased in Huaisher's anger. These guys didn't clean up the crowd for 2 days. Why did they start to slide again? In this regard, Luo Xian didn't care at all. Looking at him burning the books, she was full of joy. What a pity! I could have seen the confession just now. She sighed. Huaisher, you need to give her some courage. Huaisher was silent in shame for a long time. Sister Xian, won't you be angry? Yes. Luo Xian answered without hesitation. Although the prince belongs to everyone, if he doesn't belong to me, I'll be unhappy. Huaisher, if you tell me that you fell in love with someone else, I'll definitely be sad. Jealousy, possessiveness, selfishness, and hopeless greed. She thought for a moment, as if she had no choice, and said frankly, Because I'm such a terrible woman. No, senior. Huaishir corrected. So, don't do anything that makes me sad, Huaishir. She reached out and pinched Huaishir's face again. She touched it gently and touched it again. Otherwise, I'll definitely cry very badly. At that time, will you still like me when I show my ugly side? Huaishir shook his head and told her seriously, no matter what you become, you will never change in my heart. Luo Xian laughed. What if I become a bad person? What if I become someone you hate? It won't happen. Huaishir replied flatly. I'm here. You're always so reassuring, Huaishir. She narrowed her eyes, not bothering to hide her happiness. I like it when you say that. Because I trust you, Huaishir said. Then, please trust me a little more, rely on me a little more, and like me a little more. She stared at Huaishir and gently pleaded, take more today than yesterday, and the same tomorrow. In this way, I won't be afraid. Her long hair fluttered in the sea breeze, and her eyes shone like stars rising from the ocean. As long as you're still looking at me, I'll definitely stay in your world. I'll stay on the side where you belong. But what if I'm not qualified to bear such a responsibility, Sister Xian? Huaishir lowered his eyes in shame. Except for squandering my cheap love, I haven't done anything for you. Instead, I've asked for a lot from you, haven't I? Then please take more and rely on me more until you can't leave me. Luo Xian smiled mischievously, as if her conspiracy had succeeded. Even if you feel guilty, you can't give up. This may be the obligation of a prince. After all, I'm already by your side. Even if there is no agreement, I will not let this matter rest. Please be prepared. It sounds really scary. Huaishir leaned on the bench and sighed with relief. Fortunately, I'm not easy to deal with. Only at times like this, you don't look like a prince. Times have changed. Huaishir looked back at her. After a short silence, the two of them laughed together. In this soft afternoon, Huaishir felt the wind in the distance and gradually relaxed. He listened to the bells in the city behind him. Where are we going next? He asked. Maybe we can go to India. This time, we may really go to the deepest part of Sanlian City, Luo Xian said. I want to take back the things my father and mother left there. Where's Elder Luo? Huaishir asked. I didn't see him last time. He just left a note and disappeared. He can't have gone to hell to start class, right? Father, Luo Xian thought for a moment and said, he probably wants to take revenge for his mother and for himself. It used to be the focus of India's genealogy, the holy land of destruction, Kavanasi. It used to be a place favored by the gods. Now, under the guidance of the Pied Piper, it had fallen into the abyss, leaving only wreckage. Its real body had fallen into the deepest part of Sanlian City in hell, and it was sealed with all its strength by the maintenance of the genealogy. It was the place where Luo Siwei once used his supreme, which symbolized absolute violence, to send his crazy teacher to hell. The collapse of the world in the past had long been buried in heavy dust. Huaishir had never asked about the details. Even if he asked, Elder Luo would probably not tell him. The pain that was once engraved in that person's body could not be removed, no matter how cruel the training and ascetic practices were. After losing everything, towards hell, towards the initiator of all this, there was only hatred that could not be dispelled no matter how noble and holy the Dharma was. After Huaishir had resolved his last concern, there was only one goal left in his life, to completely destroy the element of destruction known as the Pied Piper with this pair of iron fists that had once broken the 6 paths of reincarnation. Although he did not know what kind of deal he made with the Continuation Academy, he was afraid that participating in the battle against Boshuan was just a rehearsal for his revenge. However, there's still no need to worry. Luo Xian waved her hand. Father is not someone who doesn't know what's important. He's already so old. He won't be as hot-blooded as a young man who doesn't care about anything. He must have his own plans and plans. As the younger generation, there's no need for us to worry blindly. Even so, I still can't help but have a headache. Huaishir rubbed his face. He felt that the people he knew seemed to have bigger ambitions and bigger goals than the other. On the other hand, he was simply a salted fish, immersed in the joy of counting money every day and unable to extricate himself. There was no cure for him. Just as they were chatting, time passed, bit by bit, until far away, on the passenger ship, the whistle sounded for the third time, but the request to leave the port never received a reply from the dispatch center. They waited blankly in place. It seems that I have to go. Why, sure. Luo Xian said, if this goes on, everyone will be impatient. Huaisher was silent and said softly, actually, you can rest for another day. What about tomorrow? Will the ship continue to stay tomorrow? The day after tomorrow? The day after tomorrow? Luo Xian looked at him and couldn't help but smile. Of course, if you want to violently lock me up and lock me up in your house, I will definitely cooperate. But will you do that? Huaisher smiled bitterly and shook his head. So disappointing. I was looking forward to it. You really don't understand a girl's heart at all. Luo Xian smiled and reached out to pull him up from the chair. Once again, she said, then let's settle for the next best thing. Before we say goodbye, can you give me a hug, Huaisher? With that, she opened her arms and said expectantly, even if it's me, I will need the prince to give me strength. Anytime, Sister Xian. Huaisher reached out and hugged her gently, feeling her breath blowing past his ear. Luo Xian closed her eyes slightly and felt the warmth close by. She chuckled softly. There is someone else's smell in the hug. Can I be angry? Yes. Huaisher nodded. It doesn't matter if you are furious. Then, accept the punishment. She picked up Huaisher's face, not allowing him to dodge or escape. She leaned close, kissed his cheek, and then bit it hard. After a long time, she finally let go of her hand. She took a step back. Looking at Huaisher's dull look, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She smiled proudly. Please remember me, Huaisher. She reached out and touched the wound on Huaisher's face. Please leave your smell here. Just like that, she picked up her luggage, took the things she had taken away, and turned to leave. Only Huaisher was left in a daze in the wind. After a long time, he slumped in the chair. He forgot to breathe. In the evening, in the tea house of the airport, Ai Ching raised her head and looked at a certain someone who was fidgeting opposite her. You seem to be in a mess. Her gaze swept from the needle hole on Huaisher's collar, to the wrinkles on his shirt, to the wound on his face that the silver blood band-aid could not cover, and to his messy hair that had been turned into a mess after running all the way here. It's like she thought for a moment and said jokingly, after being robbed by robbers, then attacked by fanatical fans, and after being bitten, you still have to face a storm. Probably. Huaisher panted. When he saw the bottled water on the table, his eyes suddenly lit up. He took it and began to drink it in one gulp. In short, it's a long story, he added, holding the empty bottle. Well, I can see that. Ai Ching glanced at his distracted look, stirring the black tea in the cup with the slender spoon in her hand. It's the first time I've drunk a bottle of water with someone else. Huaisher was stunned for a moment. He looked down at the bottle in his hand, subconsciously let go, picked it up again, and finally carefully put the bottle back on the table. After hesitating for a moment, he put the bottle cap aside. He put it straight, sat up straight. Oh, but I bought that bottle and haven't touched it yet. Don't worry. Ai Ching added as if she had just remembered something. Seeing Huaisher heave a sigh of relief, she comforted him. Don't worry, I didn't bring a gun. I won't steal anything from you, or hug or kiss you. Huaisher was petrified in the chair, stunned. Are you going to start talking about that well-known theory again? Ai Ching said indifferently. Don't worry. As we all know, in addition to being rich and lunatics, madmen and idealists, the most common people in the Republic are scumbags who like to cheat on several women. Compared to your predecessors, well, in terms of numbers and progress, you could be said to be conservative and harmless. Of course, it could also be because you prefer to pursue. She thought for a moment and found a word. Quality? In broad daylight, President AI, you can't talk nonsense. Huaisher subconsciously grabbed the handkerchief on the table and wiped the cold sweat on his face. After wiping it, he was about to say, how can you people from the Directorate of Defense accuse me of innocence without any evidence? Only then did he realize that his handkerchief seemed to belong to the person across the table. Moreover, She seemed to have placed the handkerchief in a convenient position early in the morning. It was convenient to access. It's night now, why sure. There will be a thunderstorm later, and you won't even be able to see the stars. So, there's no such thing as broad daylight, why sure. AI Ching crossed her hands on the table and told him bluntly, also, as your former boss, even if I'm your current boss, I have no right to tell you how to make friends. Of course, there may be some close relationship between us that isn't clear, but this doesn't stop you from choosing your own life. After all, the relationship between the Directorate of Defense and Celestial Genealogy is complicated now. Whether it's for public or private reasons, both of us should be clear about our positions and ensure that we won't give the wrong signal to outsiders because of our identities. You don't have to worry or be afraid. She picked up the cup of black tea and took a sip. I'm just saying this to tell you to relax. I won't shoot you or anything like that. Speaking of which, your reactions for the past 2 days have been quite interesting, especially when you're playing cards. It's really delightful. Huaishir was in a daze. AI Ching was puzzled. Is there anything you want to say? Huaishir was still in a daze. Holding the handkerchief in his hand, he just wanted to wipe his tears. You've already said it. What else can I say? This. He stuttered for a long time, trying to observe her expression, but AI Ching's expression was as calm as ever. He couldn't see anything. He could only ask tentatively, have you eaten? If you don't know what to say, you don't have to find something to say. It'll be very awkward. AI Ching glanced at his complicated expression and raised the corner of her eyes slightly. Before this time, I thought that the person sitting in front of me would be a boring moral specimen. I didn't expect to see you so lively. She paused for a moment and added, well, except that your connections are a little more than expected, there doesn't seem to be any problem. Huaishir was silent for a long time. He opened his mouth several times, wanting to say something. In the end, he could only sigh softly. I'm sorry to let you see me like this. It's true that you're unreasonable. AI Ching nodded and agreed. You didn't do anything, but you look guilty. It hurts my eyes. However, I think it's good to be like this. She looked at the dazed man in front of her, recalled the past memory, and sighed with emotion. It's much better than the half-dead look in the past. He was always dejected with tears in his eyes. He looked like he was about to cry in the next moment, but he didn't say anything. He couldn't get up from the mud, but he pretended to be happy with himself, holding an expression that he was very good and happy. Also, he would throw everything to the back of his mind at the drop of a hat. He would do whatever he liked, and the messy results that came out of it, because of his personality. No matter which one it was very annoying. But no matter which one it was inseparable from the man in front of her. However, he was no longer the dispirited figure that he remembered in the past. He seemed to have become stronger and more distant. You've grown up, Huaishir, she whispered softly. Huaishir looked up. He didn't hear it clearly. Nothing. AI Ching shook her head, took out 2 documents from the open briefcase beside her, and pushed them over the table. Take a look and sign it. After that, she held her chin and didn't say anything else. She just looked at Huaishir, waiting for his reply. Being stared at like that, he couldn't help but tremble. He lowered his head and flipped through it carefully. He was afraid that it would be a record of him messing around with some young lady, or evidence of him committing crimes that were finally exposed to the public, or traces of him colluding with the dark forces of hell to conspire against the law. Fortunately, he didn't have any of these, so it was none of them. The first one was the observation record written by AI Ching. It recorded in detail the operation of the ivory tower, the talents and experience of the main members, and even the process of Huaishir's guidance. It didn't mention anything that was irrelevant. It was objective, fair, and there was not a single word of falsehood. Even with Huaishir's skills in writing official documents, he couldn't see any errors. It was terrifying. Now, all that was needed was for Huaishir to personally sign and confirm that everything described in it was true. Then, it could be sealed and sent to the decision-making room for filing. And the second one, it was a strange document that even the first party's organization was smeared. The terms were detailed and complicated. After Huaisher read the beginning, he began to scroll down and found that there were more than 10 pages, and when he looked up, Confidential Operation Commissioner Employment Contract, Huaisher scratched his head and couldn't understand. What's this? It's the contract. AI Ching replied. For some reasons that I can't tell others, apart from the overhead floor, I'm now working in a department that I can't tell others about. I often have to carry out some tasks and actions that I can't tell others about. Sometimes, for some reasons that I can't tell others about, I need you to be a tool to do some things that I can't tell others about, and to ensure that no one can tell others about the final result. Of course, I will ensure that your tasks and actions will not harm your own position in celestial genealogy. You just need to provide some help at the right time. A series of words seemed to be more confusing than the terms on the contract. Huaisher was confused. She lowered her head and looked at the contract in her hand. Then, she carefully glanced at AI Ching's face. After making sure that she wasn't unhappy or gloomy, she asked, "Can you make it simpler? Indent your contract." AI Ching said concisely. "Phew, you scare me to death." Huaisher breathed a sigh of relief and patted his chest. "I thought you were going to rob me of my eggs." Taking out the indenture contract was like taking out a divorce agreement. Huaisher's heart was beating wildly. He signed his name at the back and handed it over. But AI Ching didn't accept it. She just looked at him. "Are you sure, Huaisher?" AI Ching said solemnly, "You still have plenty of time to hesitate before I take this document back. But once I put it in the box, it's very likely that you will die at some point in the future, at some place, because of my orders, in a way that no one will ever know. Your family, your friends, and your colleagues won't receive anything except the notice of your death." Huaisher was stunned. "Is it that dangerous?" "It's even more dangerous than that," AI Ching said. "You should know that I don't like to exaggerate." "Oh, then it's okay. I'm used to it." Huaisher shook his head. "Besides, if you need me, I can't just stand by and watch, right?" AI Ching was silent. She didn't say anything else. She just looked at Huaisher with a gaze that made his hair stand on end. After a long, long time, she reached out and took the contract. For a moment, she seemed to want to say something, but in the end, she still remained silent. She just closed the box in her hand. "Then official business is done. I should go," she said softly. "Take care, Huaisher." "Okay." Huaisher nodded and got up. "Take care, and, in this short pause, he thought of a lot of words to say to her, but in the end, he couldn't say it. He didn't know where she was going, and he didn't know what she was going to face. In the end, he could only repeat dejectedly, "Take care." "Okay." AI Ching nodded. Before she left, she looked at Huaisher, who was still standing behind her. Her footsteps paused slightly. "Next time, take me around here." "Okay." Huaisher nodded and didn't hesitate. "Anytime, anywhere." Then, she seemed to smile, but it couldn't be seen clearly in the reflection of the glass. He could only see her pass through the ticket gate and disappear at the end of the covered bridge. Huaisher stood in place for a long time, watching the special plane of the Central Command take off and disappear into the dark clouds in the distance. He squeezed the empty water bottle in his hand. He turned around and left. "Miss AI, do you need dinner?" Under the dim light, the crew bent down and asked softly. "No need. I want to take a nap," AI Ching said. "Just remind me before we land." "Okay." The crew nodded and finally said, "This flight will take 4 hours. The final landing point is Shurcheng at the border of Dongsha. During the process, there may be unstable airflow due to the thunderstorm. Please be careful." So, after closing the door for her, the footsteps faded away. AI Ching sat on the chair and silently looked at the distant stars outside the window. It was as if she could still see the person who was overlooking everything from behind the window in the departure hall. After a long time, she closed the curtains. She put on a mask and began to rest. However, as soon as she closed her eyes, she heard a slight vibration in her pocket. After skipping the blocked list, it directly transmitted a call. She frowned, picked up the phone expressionlessly, and answered the call. "Hello, hello." On the other end of the phone, there was an excited voice. "Oh, my good friend Radar, suddenly found out that you're coming to Dongsha? Treat me to a meal. In the Jinling branch, a certain someone in a brand new office proudly spun around in the chair twice. Okay, okay. I love you so much. Like you love every rich guy who treats you to a meal? AI Ching sneered. But I also love every rich guy equally. Chai Fei replied very innocently. They don't love my appearance or heart. They just love my position and information. So why can't I love their money? Of course, that's just for show. When the time comes, you just need to bring yourself and your credit card. AI Ching was indifferent and didn't speak. Chai Fei seemed to smell something unusual and became more curious. What's wrong? You seem to be very irritated. I'm thinking about something. AI Ching replied coldly. I don't want to be disturbed by someone. So can I trouble you to hang up the phone? Aya, she's so cold. She's definitely my best friend. Chai Fei became more and more enthusiastic. So serious? I'm very curious. I really want to know. What kind of conspiracy and plan is making you so troubled? You've only worked on the overhead floor for a few months, and you're already planning to change your leader? Ms. X's workability is flawless, and her achievements and character are unquestionable. If you want to pry into internal information, you don't have to. AI Ching said straightforwardly. It's just a very simple multiple-choice question. Say. I want to hear. Chai Fei shouted. I love to hear this. I want to hear it. AI Ching didn't say anything. She didn't urge her again. She was waiting for something in silence. Until AI Ching spoke again, calm and cold. Have you been to the garden? Chai Fei, have you ever liked a certain flower in particular? Well, although I don't really understand, it's similar to the roast duck in a restaurant, right? Maybe. AI Ching thought for a moment and continued. Sometimes you care about a certain flower. You think it's very exquisite and beautiful. Unfortunately, the color and type don't match you. The land it grows on is not in your home. The climate you love will only be destroyed by it. So, you'll feel that it's best to keep a little distance. There's no need to be selfish. If you can appreciate it, it's not bad to stay in the garden. Even if you miss it, you can come back to see it often. Yes. Chai Fei seemed to be nodding. And then, you find AI Ching said, there are too many people in the garden. Such calm words made Chai Fei's smile stiffen. She subconsciously held her breath. She didn't speak again. After a long time, she heard a faint whisper on the other end of the phone. Since everyone wants to move it back home, why can't that person be me? Chapter 1095. Late at night, Huaishir pushed open the door of the Stone Marrow restaurant expressionlessly. In the living room, Feng Shu turned around. Young master, do you want to have some supper? No, Feng Shu, you should rest. You've worked hard these past 2 days. Huaishir took off his coat and hung it on the hanger. He suddenly turned around and asked, Where is Tongyi? In the lounge. The old man replied, She seems to have been waiting for you for a long time. It looks like you have something to say. I'll get a pot of mint tea for you too. He thought for a moment and asked, Do you want some cookies? Yes, thank you. Huaishir nodded and walked straight to the lounge. He pushed open the door in front of him roughly. He saw the figure slumped on the sofa, surrounded by fries, shrimp chips, and a lot of snacks. She was still holding a pot of fried chicken and watching TV attentively. When she noticed Huaishir coming in, she picked up the remote control and turned off the TV. Huaishir only had time to hear a familiar voice on the TV, saying, Why can't it be me? He frowned and looked at the dark screen. What are you watching? The TV. Tongyi wiped the potato chip residue from the corner of her mouth and introduced excitedly. It's the popular evening drama, 24 Hours of the Scumbag. The plot is full of ups and downs. There are knives and sugar. The structure is tight. Although the protagonist is a scumbag, people can't help but be immersed in it. They both hope that he can be chopped, and they also hope that he can get away with it. Well, although both sides seem to have a lot of support, I'm in the middle. With that, she invited, How about it? Do you want to join in the viewing? Be an actress? Huaishir sneered and sat opposite her. He asked directly, Who's the director? Are you? This. Tongyi blinked innocently and seemed embarrassed. I can't deny that I have a little effect, but you can't blame me for it, right? Bang! The table suddenly shook. Huaisha no longer hid his anger and unhappiness. That's too much, Tongi. Hmm? Tongi was puzzled and asked, How is it too much? Did I eat your fries? I'll make another one for you later. Don't be angry. You know what I'm talking about, Tongi. You know why I'm angry. Huaisha asked coldly. I know you like to tease me and see me in a sorry state. But even if you want to see me make a fool of myself, there's no need to involve them, right? A joke? Tongi shook her head nonchalantly. That's not right, Huaisha. This is something you'll have to face sooner or later. Oh, I'm just helping you to, bring them forward? Tongi, Huaisha interrupted her coldly. All right. Tongi raised her hand and interrupted him before he really got angry. She got up from a sofa and leaned forward with a smile. Huaisha, let's talk about something serious. She raised her hand and snapped her fingers. The crisp sound spread out, dispelling the cicadas outside the window, the insects in the night, the electric current in the electronic equipment, and even all the insignificant noise. Everything returned to silence. Only the sound of Huaisha's breathing could be heard, and Tongi, holding her chin, asked as if she was joking, Can you recall, how long has it been since you talked to me like this? Huaisha frowned. What do you mean? It's the literal meaning, Huaisha. Tongi asked with a faint smile. How long has it been since you expressed your joy and anger directly? How long has it been since you looked back on yourself? And how long has it been since you acted like a normal person like this? Am I not normal? Huaisha asked back. Or do you think I'm sick and need treatment? It's not necessarily that you're sick, but it's not completely normal, right? Tongi looked at him and sighed with pity. A normal person won't live like a hero in a storybook. Huaisha, selfless, generous, and passionate, shining in the light. It's true that everything is magnificent and desirable, but even a prince has to go to the toilet, Huaisha. Except for a mule that has eaten too much dye, no one can poop out pink balls. She spread out her hands and asked helplessly, Can you recall how long you've been in this state? Huaisha was at a loss. He wanted to refute, but he didn't know where to start. He didn't know when it started, but he seemed to have gradually entered the role that everyone imagined. Justice, mercy, strength, selflessness, and invulnerability. He was like a hero of steel who had descended to the mortal world, bringing salvation and relief. In front of his students, he was a generous teacher. In the celestial genealogy, he was a perfect example. In everyone's eyes, he was the successor of the Republic. He represented everything that was about to rise and the glory of his return. But isn't this good? Of course it's good. Why sure? There's nothing wrong with this, is there? Tongi smiled. On her slender fingers, the teacup was lifted and rotated under a subtle balance. The white porcelain and gold rim glowed with a gentle light. But in the end, where did this change come from? She asked doubtfully. Is what you're pursuing your own compassion or the compassion bestowed by the heavens? Are you controlling your own desires or the rules of divinity? Are you the young man who once yearned for happiness or the hero in everyone's dreams? Do you achieve all this from the bottom of your heart? Or are you a moral specimen, as A.I. Ching said? Tongi looked up and asked solemnly, Are you Huaisha or Yunzhongjuan? Aren't I both? Huaisha retorted without hesitation. Aren't all these things created by me, Tongi? As long as there is growth, it must be different from the past. Or do I have to be like how I was in the past? This is also falling into another extreme, Huaisha. Tongi chuckled. Nothing is constant. It's just that sometimes the change may not be as you expect, and it may not be the result of your love. The abundance of divinity will make you love everyone, but among the many virtues, only love must be different. In the end, it will be inconvenient for you to love anyone. Perhaps everyone will love you, but in the end, everyone will fall in love with the hero, and no one will love Huaisha. Admittedly, you're doing very well now, but you must distinguish the duties and image given to you by the outside world from your true desires and love. You must understand where you are. She paused for a moment, and there was disappointment and helplessness in her eyes. If you let it go, you will be immersed in the glory and solemnity of divinity day after day, until one day you will completely forget your former side as an ordinary person and eventually become a ruthless and correct machine or a tool dominated by fate. I have seen such things too many times. In a short silence, Huaishir was stunned. However, his years of experience of being arranged and fooled reminded him that this seemed to be the truth, but there seemed to be something wrong. Immediately, he slammed the table angrily. But what does this have to do with you torturing me? Oh, don't you understand? Tongi laughed. I just want some people to remind you who you are. Is that so? Huaishir glanced at her coldly. Yes, yes. Tongi nodded seriously with an innocent face, as if she was full of bitterness and helplessness that could not be understood, and she was full of sadness and melancholy. Huaishir quietly watched her performance, unmoved. Why do I feel that you were just looking for fun? Oh, Tongi's smile became shy. She raised her thumb and index finger and gestured. Of course, I can't deny that a small part of it is because of this. But other than them, who can knock you out of that glorious and magnificent shell and restore the original appearance of that fool? Huaishir, your past, your present, and your future, Tongi said, before you became an Ascended One, and after you became an Ascended One, they have all witnessed everything of you. Huaishir, you have to face them, just like you have to face your former self. She paused for a moment, and her expression became subtle. So far, your life will be a life spent with them, won't it? Huaishir's expression twitched and twitched again. He began to have a headache, but he was speechless, unable to refute, and did not know how to deal with it. It was precisely because of this that he felt angry towards Tongi. No, it should be toward himself. What if it causes irreparable consequences, Tongi? Huaishir sighed helplessly. If they are hurt because of this, what should I do? Will there really be irreparable consequences? Tongi asked in surprise. Don't tell me you think that they'll be jealous of each other like in the harem novels. They'll be jealous of each other and fight so hard that they'll act out a house fight in front of you? Come on, Huaishir. What era is it now? What kind of people are they? Tongi counted with her fingers in front of him. She started off as an inspector and slowly made her way to the core of the director of command, becoming a key figure in the elevated floor, and even closer to becoming a creature of power with a secret mission. She was loved by humans in the abyss, a princess who had both the seed of solidification and sublimation. A real person born out of nothingness, the future king of the Darknet, the controller and creator of events and records. There was also a silent person who was loved by this world and the Silver Ocean. Even if you really have a harem and Big Quinn, you can't accommodate any one of them. The so-called love may be important, but it can't restrain their footsteps and can't make them your cage birds. Even if there really comes a day when they find that the conflict between them can't be resolved, they won't use the so-called mutual harm to solve the problem. And they won't be so stupid as to expect your pity and favor. This is no longer something you can interfere in. If you ask me, a guy like you who is overcautious won't be of much use at all. Don't overestimate yourself. At most, you'll be like a pot of flowers, placed in a garden and moved around. At most, well, you'll just be a trophy. Tongi thought for a moment and noticed Huaishir's gradually paling face. She comforted him and said, think on the bright side. Maybe everyone can reach an agreement and divide you into 4 equal parts, right? When the time comes, one piece will be here, one piece will be there, one piece will be here, one piece will be there, one piece will be there. Problem solved. How can this be solved? Huaishir was furious. They're all dead. This is the problem you have to face, Huaishir. Tongi spread her hands sympathetically. This is your own choice. If you had just flirted a little less, you wouldn't have ended up in such a tragic state. Since you enjoy more than 4 times the love, you must pay 4 times the price. Dividing into 4 equal parts is already very simple. However, that's many years in the future. You haven't even reached the legal age for marriage, so why worry so much? Yes. Huaishir was stunned for a long time, and then he subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he realized that he had been tricked by this black-hearted woman again. He was furious. Are you still fooling me? No. Tongi was puzzled. Didn't I explain? everything clearly? But if Huaisha was silent for a moment, although he knew that it was impossible, he couldn't help but ask, what if I'm terminally ill? What if they can't make me return to normal? Look at what you're saying. Tongyi held her chin and laughed. Don't you still have me? Her confidence and confidence made Huaisha even angrier. Huh? What will you use? He snorted. I'm not so easy to deal with, Tongyi. People grow. Use money? Use beauty? Money is like dirt to me, and women are like floating clouds to me. You don't think your so-called benefits will work, do you? No, no, no. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Tongyi raised her hand and pulled out a solemn book from the void. Of course, I'll use this, Huaisha. She paused for a moment and revealed an expectant smile. The book of fate that's filled with your dark history. At that moment, Huaisha felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. His eyes widened in a daze. He reached out to stop her, but it was too late. Maybe you can't understand it just by describing it, so let's try it first. Tongyi picked it up, flipped through 2 pages, and nodded. Let's start with the background of the fantasy novel you wrote when you were 9. By the way, in the Heaven Drive continent, music is king. The poor young man Zhou Shi and his sister rely on each other. Oh, did you have a sister complex at that time? It doesn't matter. Look at this setting, look at this plot. It's really full of ups and downs. It's amazing. How about we spend money to make a comic? In the future, maybe the animation will become a hit. Enough, enough, don't say any more. Huaisha covered his head with both hands. He was so embarrassed that he wanted to dig a hole and bury himself in it. His whole body was trembling, and tears were streaming down his face. Are you a human? Of course not. Tongyi had a smug expression on her face that said, I have no conscience. Don't worry, I've already prepared more than a dozen copies for you in advance, including all the stupid things you've done since you were young, as well as the unspeakable desires and fantasies you had for the ladies in your heart back then, as well as those sweet dreams that made people blush. Once you begin to deviate from human nature to divinity, I'll use your money to hire your people to help you change everything and create a big IP. I'll guarantee that every one of your fans and every animation, novel, and movie enthusiast in the present realm will have a copy. Great sage, quickly withdraw your divine power. I was wrong, okay? Huaisha collapsed on the chair. Just imagining such a future made his tears uncontrollably rush out. Compared to such an outcome, he would rather be divided into 4 classes. At least he would die with a clear conscience. Don't worry, I know you're very touched. You don't have to thank me. This is what I should do. Tongyi stroked his hair with relief and said gently, After all, from the day you signed the contract, I have to be responsible for you for the rest of your life. Don't you think so? According to the terms of the contract, you and I will share glory, power, crown, and authority. This includes and is not limited to life, soul, and even everything. She paused for a moment, and her tone became meaningful. In other words? Huaisha looked up in confusion. Then he saw her face right in front of him, and his own reflection in her eyes that were faintly glowing. A pair of slightly cold and slender hands cupped his cheeks. When he was least prepared for it, he opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. A soft touch covered his lips. It was so warm and gentle, like a fog full of joy. It broke into his consciousness, shook his reason, shook his soul, and even made him forget everything, even if it was only for a short moment. A touch, and they separated. In other words, you are my private property, Huaisha. Tongyi whispered in his ear softly. Only on this point, you have no other choice. After that, she slowly raised her head, tucked the stray hair in front of her forehead behind her ear, and happily looked down at Huaisha's stiff and dull face and told him, Don't ever forget. In this way, she waved goodbye, hummed a song, and briskly walked away with small and fragmented dance steps. Only Huaisha was left in the same place, petrified. He forgot his soul. After a long, long time, when he finally reacted, he subconsciously raised his hand to cover his mouth and couldn't help but tremble with anger. His pure body, his innocence, his integrity for so many years was taken away by that black-hearted woman in such a despicable way when he was least prepared. Thinking of this, his tears finally flowed down. My first kiss, my first kiss. And just outside the door behind him, Tangi, who had returned, poked her head out and kindly reminded him, "Oh, by the way, don't feel too bad about your first kiss. After all, you haven't had that kind of thing for a long time." As she spoke, she blinked and raised her finger to draw the outline of a bird's beak, reminding Huaishur of her unbearable past, as well as her dark past of being toyed with by this woman, and the cruel future where he would be played for many years. "Good night," she winked at Huaishur and disappeared behind the door. Only Huaishur was left sitting alone in the quiet lounge. His mind was empty. He didn't sleep all night. Chapter 1096. Teacher? Early in the morning, in front of the office door, Yuan looked at the back of the figure in the chair in astonishment. "Are you okay?" "Yes." Huaishur turned back. "What's wrong? Am I not doing well?" Yuan did not speak. She was speechless. Under the faint morning sun, the lonely figure sat in the chair, as if looking at the scenery outside the window, gazing into the distance in the dust. But his line of sight was not focused, but fell on an empty place. They had not seen each other for just one night, but he seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life. When he turned back and forced a smile, Yuan felt the sadness and melancholy from the bottom of her heart. Her heart could not help but twist into a ball. In just 2 days, her teacher seemed to have suffered a great blow. He changed from a high-spirited navigator to what he was today. How could she, as a student, not feel sad? Did something happen? Yuan asked uneasily. Yes, a lot of things happened. A lot of things. Huaishur shook his head, wiping the red corners of his eyes. And some things, once lost, can never come back. The turbid tears were no longer clear. It was as if the years of youth had gone forever. The young man who kept his chastity had passed away in the silent night. From then on, only a rough life of being played in the palm of the black-hearted woman was left. In the sigh and lament, he could not help but imagine his tragic future. Perhaps very soon, Tongji would tear apart the gentle disguise that she had been putting on all this time. Her beastly nature would erupt, and she would extend her evil demonic hands towards her. Then she would be locked up and forced to do all kinds of unspeakable things. She would be allowed to do whatever she wanted. Just like that, she would spend her life in mediocrity, doing nothing until she was 70 or 80 years old. Wait, why did it feel so exciting when he thought of it? He was stunned for a long time and shook his head crazily. He could not think about it anymore. If he thought about it again, he would also decline. Ahem, it's just a small matter, don't mention it. In Yuan's sluggish eyes, he tried hard to hide the strange smile subconsciously at the corner of his mouth, and asked seriously, "What's the matter? Why are you here so early?" I thought that teacher would also rest today. Although Yuan didn't know what was going on, she was still shocked. She tried hard to find the right words to describe her teacher's slacking behavior. In the end, she raised the document in her hand and said, "So, I thought if I came earlier, I could do more." Huaishur was stunned for a long time. He was so moved that he wanted to cry. What does it mean to be untainted by mud? After being persecuted by his heartless teacher for so long, he still woke up early and went to bed late every day to work diligently. He wasn't afraid of hardship or tiredness, doing the work of 10 people all by himself. Furthermore, he even had to clean up his mess every few days. He was simply the reincarnation of the vice principal's spirit, the future pillar of the ivory tower. Even Huaishur couldn't help but feel a little guilty at this moment. He let out a long sigh and reflected on his laziness during this period of time. Then, he took all the documents from Yuan. How could he continue to persecute such a good student? Occasionally, he had to deal with it himself. 2 hours later, Huaishur, who was dizzy, raised his head and looked at the documents that seemed to have increased in height. He wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. He began to doubt his life. Next to him, Yuan secretly sighed that her teacher had persisted for so long this time. He was really amazing. She obediently reached out, and took away a large part of the documents. Then, she added a pot of tea for him. Soon, with far more efficiency than her teacher, she finished all the work except for signing and stamping. Then, she put back the documents that were reduced to less than 1/10 of the thickness. I will sort out this part of the report first. After teacher has checked the results and found that there is no problem, you can submit it for approval. Ahem, in that case, don't do this next time. Huaishir had completely forgotten the solemn vow she had made just now. She let her take the documents away with a helpless look on her face. He began to drink tea. As the saying goes, when the teacher has something to do, the disciple will do the work. How could it be persecuted when the student helped the teacher with his work? Wasn't this natural? He was just training her ability. How could she not want to work? Huaishir sat next to her and drank tea. He watched his student work hard and felt emotional. What do you mean by the teacher's sweet little jacket? In contrast, the guy in the cabin in the woods was too unrestrained. Every day, he went between the dojo and the Doomsday campus. He didn't do anything serious. He only thought about going to his girlfriend's house for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Huaishir looked down and found that there was a missed call from that guy on his phone. He must be planning to ask for leave again. He couldn't help but shake his head. I'll add more work later. How can I be the successor of celestial genealogy if I don't have enough work? In fact, he didn't have so much work to do originally. Now, most of the official business in the ivory tower was handled by the teaching and research office. Finally, it was decided by the vice principal. Huaishir only needed to be responsible for the matters of the Doomsday campus. Most of the work could be left to other people. He didn't need to worry at all. With his current reputation and status in the Doomsday campus, did he still need to worry about being taken advantage of by others? The only thing that kept him busy recently was the foundry center that had just been built at the headquarters of the ivory tower. The department was in the initial stage. Except for the tools sent from Dongsha, America, and Rome, there was not enough manpower. And the only real foundry was Huaishir. Especially the students sent to the training class. They had to leave after the expiration of the training class. They couldn't be used for a long time at all. He could only poach a few students from the alchemy classroom as seedlings for intensive training. Compared to this newly formed team, there were so many things to deal with that there was no end to it. In this regard, Huaishir could only say, too much money, so annoying. Ever since he broke through to rank 4 and became Yunzhongjuan, he showed off in front of the whole world how terrifying the explosive production of casting techniques could be. There began to be a large number of orders for relics from the border, like snowflakes. Every day, there were countless people holding bills of lading at the entrance of the foundry center, wanting to block him. It couldn't be helped. Alchemy products were an out-and-out seller's market. The scarcity of alchemists and the production of their products determined the high price of this thing. It was common to line up for an order for 3 years. However, this was the high-end market. It was particular about tailor-made and absolute fit, as well as minimizing the negative effects brought by relics from the border to the greatest extent. But the low-end market never cared about this. If there was money, it would be sold. But the problem was, most of them were used by apprentices for practice. If they bought something back, not to mention using it a few times, it might even cause problems if it was placed there as a decoration for a long time. It was not that the major workshops did not have a stable quantity of products, but a stable output had a stable supply agreement. Those products had all been taken into the pockets of the major families, plutocrats, and families before they were even out of the furnace. If one wanted to cut the queue, they either had to have enough face or enough money. The market was always in a state of unsaturated hunger. Moreover, at this critical juncture of the War of the Worlds, who didn't want to have more reserves? At this time, Huaishir's preciousness was reflected. A single person could produce the same output as an entire large alchemy workshop in a whole year without doing anything, even if that was the effect of the correction value. In fact, the quantity and productivity were reduced by half. In particular, he had a complete set of mainstream weapons like swords, spears, swords, halberds, hatchets, hooks, and forks. Moreover, he was backed by the Imperial Academy and had countless Tongyi's tools at his disposal, supporting high-end customization. Moreover, Huaishi's technology of activating and repairing precious relics was unparalleled in the entire realm. No one could learn it even if they wanted to. Naturally, the market competitiveness was frighteningly high. Even the Stone Cauldron Association's commissioner repeatedly considered Huaishi after walking around a few times. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't have any foundation in the Stone Cauldron Association and was biased to the extreme, and that he had the lives of two great grandmasters in his hands, he would have been able to get a nomination for the Great Grandmaster evaluation at the end of next year. In short, as the Ascender who had single-handedly opened the curtains of the War of the Worlds, Huaishi had not only been in the limelight, but also won countless praises, praise, and even hatred and jealousy. His biggest gain was that his business was surprisingly good. Never in her wildest dreams would Huaishi have imagined that she would one day become rich because of an arms dealer. Of course, just like how the streamers were all supported by big brothers, although there were many individual investors, they didn't constitute a quantity. If one wanted to become rich, they had to rely on windfalls. And in addition to the large number of individual investors and orders from more than a dozen large enterprises, the one who ranked above all the customers was one of the current 5 pillars, Huaishi's old friend. Eastern Summer Genealogy. In this business, Diding, who came to participate in the negotiation as a representative, was too lazy to talk about the conditions. It vividly displayed 4 words: rich and overbearing. The settlement equivalents were not limited to Eastern Summer Yuan, origin crystals, the copper essence of Mount Shouyang, and even the herbal medicine inventory of Mount Yidai. As long as the ivory tower opened its mouth, anything was negotiable, even if it was a premium to offset the loan. As for the goods, there were no other requirements at all. As long as there was something, they would accept it. There was no limit to the grade, as long as it was a relic from the border. There was no limit to the quality, as long as it could be used, there was no problem. There was no limit to the effect. Even if it was an iron rod with a blade, they would still pay the bill. There was no need to say so many useless things, just a simple sentence. Take the money, give me the goods. It was as if it had gone crazy. It was unknown whether it was because it was sure that Huaishi wouldn't ask for too much or just make up the numbers. In short, Xianyao only had one sentence: the more the better. Huaishi was so scared that he tossed and turned for several days, not understanding what exactly Xianyao was selling. It couldn't be that it had nothing better to do than to trick him, right? After pondering for several nights, he finally chose to open the window and speak frankly. Even if it's the more, the better, at least there should be a limit, right? Brother Diding, can't you at least give me a number? As a result, Diding held his teacup and thought for a long time, and then nodded and said, "That's right." Then, he directly transferred the deposit sufficient to cover Huaishi's cerebral hemorrhage to the Ivory Tower's public account. "Let's try 100,000 guns first," Diding responded. "We'll talk about it later if it's useful." Chapter 1097. Until now, more than 90% of the Foundry Center's production had been taken up by the Dongsha genealogy. Until today, only 8,600 pieces had been delivered. But the next day, after the first batch arrived, Diding ordered another 100,000 pieces, until Huaishi couldn't help but call Yishueya. Yishueya only asked him 2 questions. Who is the most important person in the Dongsha genealogy? Once someone leaves, the Dongsha genealogy will immediately have problems. I don't need to explain it in detail. You can make a list yourself. The first was naturally the master of the genealogy, Mystic Bird. Next up was the strongest archaeologist, his natural enemy, Chu Hai. But what about next? White Emperor's son. No matter how good White Emperor's son was there no one else in Dongsha that could fight? Qilin? Qilin was powerful, but Dongsha would still continue to rotate without him. Baizhe. In a sense, that kind of luck was indeed the best in Dongsha. However, unless Dongsha really couldn't survive, why would they rely on luck to survive? Diding? Qiongqi? Or the primal chaos that appeared out of nowhere? Or the torch dragon that had retired for who knows how many years? None of them. The final answer was a little brother that had been ignored by everyone for 10,000 years. Perhaps I am the cloud that solidifies my body. Yin Qinga. As the rank 5 soaring serpent of Dongxia, he also held the title of the North Star. For a long time, Yin Qinga was considered the shame of the rank 5 because of his overly tanky combat strength. After all, he was someone who could deal damage and was stronger than him. But those who thought so often overlooked a problem. The essence of the Ascended was that they were tools. Since they were tools, being useful was the most important thing. Could it be that mystic bird with the white wolf hook could really make the genealogy's account become useless? Also, even if the genealogy's account became useless, why did they have to go through so much trouble to give him the North Star? The answer was that there were too many of them. To put it more crudely, there were too many of them to count. Since his debut, Yin Qinga had always used one move to conquer the world, doppelgangers. If 1 wasn't enough, 10 wasn't enough. If 10 wasn't enough, then 100. If 100 wasn't enough, then 10,000. According to the observations and records of the outside world, Yin Qinga could have as many as 100,000 clones at the most exaggerated time. In fact, this was far from his limit. Dongxia hadn't used the correction value yet, and it would only increase if she used it. 100,000 doppelgangers meant 100,000 copies of Yin Qinga's. As long as there was one left, it wouldn't count as all of them dying. Of these 100,000 doppelgangers, even the weakest, most incompetent, and most useless one was still a sublimator. According to the Statistics Department of the Directorate of Command, there were over 1.4 million ascendants in the world. He alone could forcefully expand it by another 100,000. If 100,000 people were used to open up hell, they would be 100,000 pioneers. If they were used to maintain order, they would be 100,000 policemen. If they were used in war, an army of 100,000 sublimators that possessed souls and origin substances, shared one heart, shared thoughts, and could instantly change strategies and receive information. Furthermore, unless the last person in the command center died, they would not collapse. It was an absolute nightmare, and this was only his lower limit. As for his upper limit, there was no upper limit. There was only a limit to how much he could spend. It all depended on how much equipment he could get. There was no point in giving him a full set of equipment. More importantly, how was he going to arm 100,000 people? Even Xian Yao would go bald if there was a shortage of 100,000 people. Even if Dongxia was a large organization, it couldn't completely revolve around a single person, right? Weren't they going to continue living? And at this time, when a good blacksmith from Dongxia, who was extremely reliable and had a high production output, quietly passed by, he was already destined to be targeted by Xian Yao. What did it mean to have a golden wind and a jade do surpass countless human encounters? What did it mean to be a match made in heaven? That was what it meant to be. If it weren't for the fact that Huaishur had already been deeply tied to celestial genealogy and couldn't be undone, Xian Yao would have pulled him back even if he didn't care about his reputation. Now, other than doubling the number of people sent for training, he had to get Huaishur to sign the contract first. Although he didn't know what kind of deal Russell had with Xian Yao, the direct result was that Huaishur's production for the next 10 or so years had basically been bought out by Dongxia. It was hard to say what would happen 10 or so years later. There were so many orders in front of him, but because he hadn't been single for long enough and his hand speed wasn't fast enough, he couldn't make any money. This made Huaishur's eyes red with anger, and he wondered where he could go to get a large amount of correction points. However, Jaeger's anti-hypertensive medicine wasn't for nothing. Right now, the Bureau was guarding against Russell like he was a thief, and there was no way for them to succeed. On the other hand, Huaishur still owed them a large sum of money, and he wished he could send them a text every few days to ask for payment. This time, AI Ching might have come with this intention. In response, Huaishur could only say, "What does the money Russell borrowed have to do with me, Huaishur?" There was no way he could return the money. He was so poor that he was about to die. When he had broken through, it had felt great. But after he had broken through, problems had begun to appear. Relying on the Bureau's origin substance supplies and correction points, Huaishur could naturally summon the wind and summon the rain. He was incomparably awesome, and he could do whatever he wanted on the endless seas. Using the Nautilus to reforge the Imperial Palace was indeed the best option. But the problem was that the better the item, the more expensive it was. This was especially true for a deep-strike warship like the Nautilus. Just driving it out and burning fuel alone would cost an astronomical figure. Ordinary origin substance crystals weren't enough. There were too many impurities, which would cause abnormalities in the Nemo engine when it exceeded the speed limit. If he wanted to overclock it, he would have to burn an even higher layer of liquefied essence. The world's largest source of liquefied essence was the Silver Sea. It didn't even need to be processed. He could just casually grab a spoonful. The problem was that every spoonful of liquefied essence was a spoonful less of humanity's lifeblood. Even if Jaeger was crazy, there was no way he would agree. He would have to process it himself. The processing ratio of ordinary origin substance crystals to liquefied essence was 29. 44:1. This was just the cost of fuel. It didn't include maintenance, equipment, or even weapons replenishment. The figures for every project were enough to make Huaishi's liver tremble. Even worse, Huaishi didn't even have any mana. Cloudlord was most famous for having a lot of mana. Every time he advanced, his origin substance reserves would at least triple, and the Krypton version would have 5 times or more. But the problem was that Cloudlord also used up a lot of mana. Didn't thunder and rain cost money? Even though Huaishi's origin substance reserves had increased by more than 8 times after he advanced, it was still useless. After returning to the Ivory Tower and completing the preparations for the Nautilus, he had only used his full strength once in order to cooperate with the data collection. It took 10 seconds for the iron rain and thunderlight to flatten the fortifications that had been created using the White City stronghold as a template. Not even a fragment larger than a fist could be found. And 10 seconds later, Huaishi was gone. He had overdrawn his origin substance and was paralyzed for half a day. The cost and expenditure caused the vice principal's hair to wither at a rate of 20%. In the end, everyone came to a conclusion. Huaishi was very awesome. Huaishi was very powerful. But at the same time, Huaishi was also very expensive. After Russell saw the results, he immediately gave an order. Stay here and don't move. Wait for Orange and the Sucker to grow out on their own. Otherwise, everyone would have thrown this scourge into the battlefield of the War of the Realms long ago to stir up trouble. How could they let him stay at home and waste his time away? Russell absolutely couldn't agree to this before the Federal Bureau of Investigation was willing to pay the bill. Otherwise, the little money he had saved up with great difficulty would probably be burned up by a few random shots from his students every day. He might even owe a huge debt, and the great Loki would be reduced to a state where he couldn't protect his integrity in his old age. Huaishi also didn't expect that one day, as a tool, he would actually be forced to retire to the second line because of the cost-performance ratio. Every day, all he did was read the newspaper and take a walk. He was so bored that he was about to die. Don't tell me I have to do all the exciting work? On this boring afternoon, Huaishi slumped in his chair and groaned helplessly. Then, he heard a knock on the door without any warning. 5 hours ago, Yomi no Kuni, Dojo. 10 minutes before the unconnected call was broadcasted, he saw a black car in front of the door without any identification, license plate, logo, or even similar model. Years of family education, influence, and his own outstanding ability to commit crimes. All of these intuitions brought about a faint sense of foreboding in his heart the moment he saw the car. Especially after he asked the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper didn't know the origin of the car. They only knew that the person accompanying it had a terrifying background. He first wrote 2 preset text messages, pressed the phone number to Huaishi's number, and walked in. Then, he smelled the smell of disinfectant. It was in the air. It was so thin, but it was distinct, evoking his family education when he was 6 years old. On that day, after he finished watching the rerun of Supernatural Eagle on TV, his grandfather picked him up from the ground and carried him to his study room. He opened the door of the darkroom and pointed at the things on the shelf, making him remember them one by one. The things, patterns, logos, and characteristics of the first to third rows represented fat sheep that must not be let go. Collect as many as you can. If you can't collect them all, call the whole family to collect them together. Everyone will definitely give you a big share. The fourth to sixth rows were things that the forest hut had to turn around and run as far and as fast as possible after seeing them. It included and was not limited to the logo of the Dark Army, the emblem of the destruction element, the symbol of the fallen country, the Sea of Thunder, and even the symbol of the Eternal World Group. And the things in the last row were very simple. After encountering them, don't run. Eat, drink, and play. Seize the time to have some fun. If the situation was not good, immediately slit your throat. That way, you can leave more easily. Most importantly, don't King bring these things into the house. Among them, the smell was different from all the other disinfectants. It was clean and pure to the point that even the most sophisticated sterile room could not compare to it. There was only one place it represented, and only the people there would have such a strange smell lingering on them. Continuation Academy. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.